Class is in session, hitting the books. Pub Sports Radio, Monday, September the 25th. Ian Cameron and Conor Mack, once again every Monday with you for your daily first look, or weekly, I should say, first look at the college football card. It was a fun, exciting, just a tremendous menu of games this past weekend in college football, and it definitely looks like we are going to have some more excitement on the way this week ahead. Still not quite the menu we had last week, but there are still some pretty good matchups. There's a lot of weeknight action as well, which we will dive into, starting with Thursday night. We have the Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders and the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. Western Kentucky, 5.5-point home favorites here, 60 being the total in this game. The money coming in a little bit on Middle Tennessee State, who very much disappointed me on Saturday, as I took them as a small home favorite against Colorado State. It was one of those plays where, fading Colorado State off the huge game, the Rocky Mountain Showdown against Colorado. I thought it'd be a tough spot for them traveling to Murfreesboro, Tennessee, coming off a game like that. It was a pretty even game for the most part, but it flipped in the fourth quarter. Colorado State got a go-ahead touchdown, some pretty shoddy defense from the Middle Tennessee in that game, and then just a fumble inside their own 10-yard line, scoop and score, return for a touchdown, and that put some separation between them and Colorado State and Middle Tennessee. And by that point, they were pretty much fucked, down by 14 points, and they weren't able to come back. So the spot was a good one for Middle Tennessee, but you don't always cash a ticket just based on betting on the team in a good spot. They have to play well, and they have to avoid mistakes and play some defense. Middle Tennessee clearly did not do that against Colorado State last week. On the flip side, I did cash a ticket through the back door with Western Kentucky against Troy. A last couple of minutes touchdown there got them inside the number, +4, +4.5, whatever you got, in a tough, hard-fought game against Troy. Definitely they had their issues, Western Kentucky, consistently moving the ball against, still a pretty good Troy defense. They end up losing 27-24. We'll see how they fare here in this game. I still like Austin Reed very much at quarterback for Western Kentucky. A very dynamic offense here. They're betting Middle Tennessee State on the early week action here. Middle Tennessee State, like I said, has been taking some money here. It is worth noting, though, Middle Tennessee State, they have been probably a better underdog than they've been a favorite, and we've seen it the last 2 weeks. They did cover. They nearly beat Missouri 23-19. So I still think Western Kentucky's a little bit of a better team, but the defense is still a little suspect for Western Kentucky, that is. I think actually this game might go over the total. We're talking about 60 here in this game. I certainly didn't like what I saw out of the Blue Raider defense against Colorado State. They play like this here. Western Kentucky is going to put up points and move the ball, but the Western Kentucky defense isn't any great shake. So I like the over more than anything. I think if you got Middle Tennessee early, you might be on the right side. 5.5, I don't like it as much. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, you know what? We were on live and gave it out with our guy Cheshire Cat at the halftime, but I was going to take this over Western Kentucky Troy earlier in the week, and I don't know, I just didn't. It moved up to 58.5, and I didn't. But you're right, Middle Tennessee's defense is just looked like Swiss cheese. I know Colorado State's feeling better with their new quarterback, but you mentioned that second half, the defense just is not good, and we're starting to see the rankings go down. I thought it was a good effort, and you mentioned the backdoor cover there by Western Kentucky. Still has Austin Reed. He's just going to go out there and sling it and just not give up. But now they're laying points. This is not really where I want them, even at home. I have nothing here. I kind of lean over, but I think I'm going to wait on this total a little bit, at least a day or two, see if we get any movement on it.
Yeah, he did have a fumble, but I have to admit, he looks like he's a better quarterback this year for Middle Tennessee. Nicholas Vadiato, the quarterback here for MTSU. He had a pretty good game, actually, against Colorado State. Threw the ball well. He has some mobility. He can run with it a little bit. Definitely looks like a better quarterback compared to last year when it was a little more erratic from him under center for the Blue Raiders. All right, next up, it is Temple and Tulsa matching up here. Tulsa 3.5-point home favorites, 54.5 being the total in this game. Temple, obviously, just what can you say? Not even the bad weather and the remnants of Tropical Storm Ophelia could help Temple out enough against Miami on Saturday. They were just completely outmanned, as you kind of thought they might be. But I thought they would be, especially with the weather being a little dicey. Thought they'd be a little bit better than losing 41-7. But No, they were completely outplayed. Miami with a pretty easy cover. They just dominated the second half, shutting out Temple in the second half. Temple got their one touchdown late in the first half and then did absolutely nothing in the second half. Could not run the football. When you have, as a team, 16 rush attempts for 11 yards, that's hideous. I mean, you just cannot run the football. They couldn't in that game. All their offense came from Warner throwing the football for Temple. And that's been more of an issue for Temple this season. If you actually look at Temple's numbers, you look at the rushing yards, it's pitiful. 107.5, 3.9 yards per carry. They are not running the football. It is a one-dimensional offense. So to me, when I look at Temple, if you've got any kind of good pass defense, you're probably going to shut them down because they can't run the football. And the only way they've been moving it is throwing the ball through the air. If you have a good pass defense, you can probably shut them down. Problem is, Tulsa doesn't have a very good pass defense. If you look at Tulsa, they're giving up 302 passing yards per game. They're giving up a 70.8% completion rate on average to opposing quarterbacks, Tulsa. So I actually think this could be a good matchup here for Temple because Temple can only move the ball through the air. Tulsa can't stop anybody through the air based on their stats so far this year. On the flip side, you look at Tulsa. Coming into this game, they're off a big win on the road at Northern Illinois, 22-14. Big bounce back from them. They got steamrolled by Oklahoma the week before that. They have, of course, Cardell Williams at quarterback because they've had injury issues with Braylon Braxton, the guy that was supposed to be the number one quarterback for Tulsa. And look, he's a work in progress here, Cardell Williams, and certainly 8 for 20, 40% completions. It's not like he was great throwing the ball, 2 interceptions, so he's definitely a work in progress. The good news is Tulsa was able to get 179 rushing yards in that game against Northern Illinois in the victory. And if you look at this Temple Owls team, here is a matchup where their run defense giving up 195.2 rushing yards per game, 4.9 yards per carry. Tulsa should be able to move the ball on the ground, even if Cardell Williams is back at quarterback and he's still trying to improve as a pocket passer. They've still got that ability to run against a bad Temple run defense. So this is another one where total in the 54.5, 55 range actually might be a little light because Temple should be able to throw on Tulsa. Tulsa should be able to run on Temple. That's the way I see this matchup here. So I definitely would lean to this game going over the total. I think at above a field goal, I lean to the points here with Temple. Because like I said, Temple as a dog, I think they're going to get the passing game going with E.J. Warner because Tulsa's secondary has been hideous. So it should be a pretty tight game. I think a competitive game. So at plus 3.5, I'm certainly leaning at the Temple side and also over in this matchup. C-Mac, what do you think here? Temple, Tulsa.
I got to go check some. I think the internet might be going, but let's get to it. This is a problem here. It's just going to keep going on with Temple not being able to run the ball. EJ Warner can only do so much. And then the Temple defense is just not good. There was question marks. We even talked about it. Miami went down there and took care of him easy. And this is bad Temple team. Flip side, though, last week I thought there's no way. I was a little shocked Northern Illinois was favorites against even Tulsa, in that game last week. And it was pretty close, though. Like you mentioned, both teams had turnovers, looked sloppy. They both had about the same amount of yards in the game. They should just run it here. Tulsa, run. And you mentioned a guy like Williams. I don't know how much throwing he's going to do. And he didn't look great, 100 yards, 2 picks. I hate to say it. I just don't want to lay more than a field goal here with Tulsa. I'd lean to them a little bit, here 3.5. I'll be right back.
There we go. Conor checking his internet connection, making sure it's all good. I do want to mention, the over 2 interests me. Like I said, Temple plus the points. And look, there has been money coming in on Temple. Tulsa opened minus 4.5 in this game. They're down to 3.5 point home favorites right now. So there has been some money on the Temple side. And I think they see what I see. And I think Temple can throw. Temple, if they can't throw the ball, they're facing a team that can with good cornerback play, good play in the secondary, they can shut them down through the air. They're definitely not going to move the football because they can't run worth a lick. But Tulsa's pass defense has been leaky, so I do think Temple can move the ball through the air. And on the flip side, like I said, it's kind of like strength versus weakness for these two offenses. Both of these Tulsa's offense is better running the ball. Temple's worse stopping the run. Temple's better throwing the football. Tulsa's worse stopping the pass. So that's why I think the matchup works here. both teams are going to want to be able, I should say, to move the football via their preferred method of doing so. So that's why I definitely think the game could go over that 54.5. And like I said, leaning to Temple here, plus the 3.5. All right, the third and final game for Thursday night. It is the matchup of the two debutantes, if you will, in FBS football this year. Jacksonville State taking on Sam Houston State. Of course, both of these programs entering FBS football this season, making this a very interesting matchup here between these two programs. We've got Jacksonville State 6.5-point road favorites, 36.5 being the total in this game. If you can't move the ball worth a damn on offense, there's just no way I can trust you. And that's the last straw for me with Sam Houston State and what I saw last week against Houston. I took them plus the points. It was more I didn't trust Houston laying double digits. But for the first time this season, that defense got ripped apart. And look, Sam Houston State's defense has been the only good thing about that football team this year. They've hung in there. They've given their team a chance to win a lot of these games, but they could not handle the speed and really the athletes at both the receiver and the running back spot that Houston could provide. And to be real with you, if you look at Sam Houston, and as great as those defensive numbers were early in the season, you know, you played BYU, a plotting offense this year, Air Force, you know, one-dimensional. You got to just gear up to stop the run, and they did a pretty good job there. Houston's, say what you will about Houston and Dana Holgorsen, who I don't like very much as a coach. They do have athletes, and Sam Houston State struggled with the athleticism, with the speed that Houston put out there against that defense last week, and they got absolutely crushed. And once they get behind Sam Houston State, there's no coming through the back door. Not with that offense. Absolutely hideous. They have scored in 3 games this year 10 points. 10 points in 3 games this year combined for this Sam Houston State offense. It's dreadful. It's absolutely awful. It wasn't any better with Grant Gunnell. You know, they changed quarterbacks. It didn't help. You know, still, and this is a guy that's been around the block. Arizona, Memphis. He's been with a bunch of different programs. They replaced Shoemaker with him, and it wasn't any better. Their starting back, Zach Herbacek, is doubtful for this game. Ife Adeyi, questionable, their lead receiver. Now they got injuries on that side of the ball. That's not what you want to see for already an offense that really can't do much. Jacksonville State, on the flip side, I actually like what I'm seeing from Rich Rod's team, especially defensively. You know, they shut down UTEP. They 49-3 against East Tennessee. They did struggle with Coastal. That's probably the one game where they did have a rough defensive game. But again, that's Grayson McCall, pretty solid Coastal offense. And then last week against Eastern Michigan, pitching a shutout, 21-0. Now, look, UTEP's offense isn't great this year. They've definitely been disappointing as a team, but especially their offense as well with Hardison back. We thought a lot they'd be good this year offensively.
Really bad.
And they haven't. And look, Eastern Michigan is a horrible offense. Absolutely terrible this year, Eastern Michigan on offense. But is Sam Houston any better than UTEP or Eastern Michigan on offense? I don't think so. So to me, I look at this. This is another matchup where Jacksonville State defensively should play pretty well in this game. I laid the points, Connor, 6.5 here with Jacksonville State. I just think there's a big difference between these two teams. And for as much as Sam Houston State's defense up until the Houston game played so well, kept them in games, eventually the defense gets worn out when you're going to be 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out punt all the time. And that's exactly what we've seen.
True.
And to be real with you, even though they fought against BYU, still lost by 2 touchdowns. Even though they fought against Air Force, you still lost by 10 points. And then, of course, the defense just got carved and got tired, got gassed because the offense was doing nothing in the 38-7 loss against Houston. So I'm laying the points on the road here with Jacksonville State. I don't always like doing that with these weeknight games, laying road favorites, but I think there's a bigger gap between these two teams than this point spread indicates. And I like Zion Webb, the quarterback. He's still trying to get better as a pocket passer. Zion Webb, the quarterback for Jacksonville State, but he's got athleticism. He can run. And the one thing we're seeing, and we saw it with Donovan Smith of Houston last week against Sam Houston, is the mobile quarterback gave Sam Houston's defense fits and problems. And Zion Webb's got the capability to do the same here for Jacksonville State, the Gamecocks. What do you think here, Connor? The two newbies in FBS battling it out.
Yeah, I have to look up news on Webb, though. Is he going to play this game? He didn't play the last one, didn't he?
Yeah, we'll take it. That's a good point. He didn't. Let me see. It was Logan Smothers. Yeah, good point. Logan Smothers, the last
Yeah.
game against Eastern Michigan. He wasn't really that good, to be honest with you. 9 for 19, 40. Not as a passer, anyway. Not really that great. He was a pretty good runner, though. 118 rushing yards for him. Him and Zion Webb, Logan Smothers, who played against Eastern Michigan, Zion Webb, they're both very, very erratic throwing the ball. No question.
Yeah.
But they are very good athletically, mobile quarterbacks, dual threats. So whoever plays, the way I see it, Sam Houston's offense is the issue. Like the defense can hang in there and hang in there and hang in there. That's all fine and well, and maybe that happens here, but eventually they're going to get worn down and probably lose by double digits because we've seen that every game from Sam Houston so far.
Yeah, I think it's probably going to happen here. And it's just, I just was wondering if he'd be in, but they're both similar type quarterbacks, like you talked about. They don't throw it a ton, run it. Jacksonville State, the defenses look really good. How is Sam Houston going to score any points? Now, we know Eastern Michigan, I thought, is down a little bit this year. And they didn't get it done. They didn't even score against Jacksonville State. And you talked about how good their defense has been. I don't know how Sam Houston moves the ball. I just you mentioned it's got to feel horrible. They go out there and the offense can't get first downs and keep the defense like they're just on the field constantly.
And they find offensive team in FBS right now. Sam Houston.
It is. It for sure is, and they just can't do anything. So it's going to be tough for them. And they finally cracked where Houston just ran the ball all over them. They threw it too, but so there's going to be trouble. If Jacksonville State can run the ball, because we know they don't throw it around, they will win and cover. But if they have trouble, this could be close. It's just not enough. It's not enough for Sam Houston. You would need way more than doubles for me to look at them, and that's crazy right now with this offense. So I kind of agree with you here a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt. Definitely think this is a team that can get the job done. Again, we're asking them to win by a touchdown. It is on the road, short week. I get it, travel. And all that. And they've only had one road game this year, Jacksonville State, and that was the 30-16 loss to Coastal. Don't even put Coastal in the same sentence as Sam Houston, especially offensively. I still think Jacksonville State very capable to win this game by at least a touchdown. All right, let's go to Friday. Louisville, NC State. We've got Louisville, 3.5-point road favorites, 54.5, 55 being the total in this game. I hate to be Mr. Road favorite again, but if I'm playing this game, Connor, I'm looking at Louisville. I was very disappointed with NC State, and maybe he was a one-year wonder, Brennan Armstrong, because there's not really much I saw last week against let me make sure I overstate this because you have to. It was a bad Virginia defense last week, and this NC State offense still was scuffling the whole game. Everything they got, it was a battle. It was a struggle for NC State to get first downs, to eventually get the points they got. And that was against a Virginia defense that has been absolutely brutal so far this season. So, I don't like what I'm seeing. And as far as the NC State defense is concerned, I know Notre Dame's got a very good offense, and they got shredded in that game. But I still think that defense isn't as good. And in Virginia and Calandria, when they needed a stop in that game, they have still allowed Virginia to move that ball and tie the game. Now, I know NC State still prevailed 24-21 just because of a great kick return that put them in position to win the game before it got to overtime with that game-winning field goal. And then what a crazy finish it was. They looked like they were going to have to kick the field goal from the, like a long one from 5+ yards out. Then there's one of those leverage penalties against Virginia or piling on. And then the 15-yard penalty, it gets moved up and they get to re-kick it. And then obviously it's a much easier kick, and NC State wins. You talk about another brutal way to lose for Virginia, and they suffered through it again last week against NC State. But I just think Louisville might just be the better of these two teams. What's Louisville done wrong so far this year? They beat Georgia Tech. They beat Indiana. They crushed Boston College. That offense and Jeff Brom everywhere he goes. Doesn't matter. Western Kentucky, Purdue, now at Louisville. Doesn't matter. He's got great offenses, great quarterback play. And we're seeing that again from Jack Plummer. He's got great scheming. It's not just the quarterback play and the personnel on the field. They just have a good game plan every week on the offensive side of the football with Jeff Brom at the controls as head coach. And we're seeing it again from this Louisville team. Very dynamic offensive football team. What I like from Louisville here too is they're running the ball very well. 6 yards per carry this season. for the Cardinals. 237.2 rushing yards per game, both top 10 in college football. That rushing attack has been absolutely terrific here so far, and it's been a balanced offense too. I mean, they're running the ball every bit as much, if not more, as throwing it. And that's really a good thing to see. And if you look at NC State going into this matchup here, their run defense has been solid. Their pass defense so far this year, again, they've been giving up yards through the air. I don't think they're nearly as good on that side of the football. So, 3.5 the number here. We know it's a Friday night home game at Carter Finley Stadium in Raleigh for NC State, but I don't know. When you're barely beating Virginia last week, that tells me you're not really a great team this year, or as good as you've been recently. I think, to me, NC State's a little bit on the downturn, and here's Louisville on the uptick. I think getting Brom in here and replacing Satterfield with Brom has been just a huge breath of fresh air for this Louisville football team. So at this number, it's Louisville or pass for me. Connor, what do you think?
Yeah, it's NC State, the defense. I think they're just not the same. We know they lost some guys, but I still thought they'd be better than this. For Virginia to do what they did, Calandra throw the ball kind of all over him. I think he almost had 300 yards. He was good with Virginia. Yeah, and it was tough. They ended up getting the win anyways, NC State. Louisville just crushed, Boston College. That was just it was 28-0 real quick in that game. NC State has, and also with NC State, you mentioned Armstrong. I think that was a 1-year wonder. It seems like he tries to do too much. We know he's a guy, he could take down and run it. I'm not trying to say he's not great, but there's just a lot of pressure on him. And I don't know if they can get it done. They've just been the shits. You want to take NC State, they are back at home. I would need more than a field goal. Their last 5, their own 5 ATS. And, they even at home is where you want them. They haven't got it done. And Louisville has been great against the number. They're 8-4 the last 12. A team that's always kind of had me a little bit. So I'll stay off. Lean Louisville, but I'm off here.
All right, off this game. And by the way, keep an eye on, and I mentioned how under Jeff Brom always wants to be balanced. He does want to run it, although in the past he's definitely thrown the ball a lot. This year he's not throwing it as much. Do you know why? Because you got a Jawar Jordan in your backfield. That's why. 100 rushing yards plus for him in back-to-back games here for Louisville. He's been terrific in the running back spot, so keep an eye on that. He has been a great offensive force here, carrying that rock for Louisville this season. All right, Louisiana Tech and UTEP. Wow, we've got UTEP 1-point home favorites, 52.5 the total in this game. I'm on Louisiana Tech here, Connor, and this is not me singing the praises and giving everybody here watching the show a ringing endorsement of Louisiana Tech. Okay, this team hasn't been any great shakes either this season. With the way they've played. That's been a very disappointing Louisiana Tech team. 2-3 is being kind, with what we've seen here so far from Louisiana Tech. All that being said, I know they did put up a battle on the road against Nebraska, and we know Nebraska is still trying to work their way back into prominence. It wasn't pretty. There was a delay due to lightning during that game. They lost 28-14, but they lost outright as favorites against North Texas and gave up 40 points in that game. They gave up 38 points to SMU. Certainly their defense has not been very good for the most part, this Louisiana Tech team. That being said, UTEP is horrendous, man. They're the worst of the two evils, in my opinion, in this game. What is happening with UTEP is an utter disgrace, considering what they've got in terms of returning talent. They've got so much back on the defensive side of the ball from last year. It's supposed to be a really good defense. I haven't seen it. UNLV goes up and down the field and trucks them last week on the road in El Paso. They could not stop UNLV worth a damn, 45-28. And this offense, man, all I read and heard, and I bought into it, a lot of people did, though. All the starters on the O-line back. Gavin Artison, a third, fourth-year starting quarterback. Deion Hankins, running back's been there forever. The great receivers they've got, including the guy that almost transferred out, Tyron Smith, staying on with UTEP. This was supposed to be a loaded offense, supposed to be terrific and ability to move the football. Well, yeah, they scored 28 against UNLV. That's their high water mark. But a lot of that was in garbage time when they were trailing, when UNLV was playing that passive defense. They only scored 10 against Arizona, 7 against Northwestern. and then 14 against Jacksonville State in their very first game as an FBS program. 1-4 ATS this season for UTEP. And when you look at both of these teams, and look, Bachmeier has just driven me bonkers this year with just his erratic play. Thankfully, last week they gave Jack Turner a chance at quarterback, and I thought actually I have to say he looked up better than what I had seen from Bachmeier, to be quite honest with you. I mean, it got to the point, I think, where with Bachmeier, all the struggles, and look, I know he's been banged up, and that's the reason why he didn't play against Nebraska. But man, even if that shoulder injury heals for him and he's available for this game against UTEP, I'd stick with Turner. I'm telling you, Bachmeier has not done a thing for me going back to his days at Boise State as a quarterback. He has not done anything for me and say, wow, this is a big-time quarterback at the college level. I have not once thought that of Hank Bachmeier. And then Jack Turner comes in last week and, decent performance, I thought. Better. Remember, that's a pretty good Nebraska defense. Don't forget how well they bottled up Colorado for a large part of that game before they got tired in the second half. I think Nebraska's actually got an improving defense. So for Turner to play like that on the road, I was impressed with his play. I thought he was solid, and I thought he was certainly better than what we had seen out of Bachmeier in the games before that. 27 of 42, 64% completions. That's solid to me on the road against a pretty good Nebraska defense. So I'm hoping it's Turner. I'll really like Louisiana Tech in this game if it's Turner once again at quarterback. And even if it's not, there's no way I'm getting to UTEP. There's just no way. That's not happening. It's Louisiana Tech or nothing for me. CMAC, Louisiana Tech, UTEP.
Yeah, I think you gotta go with Turner real quick with La Tech. You just leave Bachmeier, on the sidelines. But they hung around, mentioned on the road. Nebraska's not very good. And La Tech's defense isn't very good, period. But on the flip side, this UTEP team is awful. I don't know how. We mentioned getting Bachmeier out. How? Hardison is still the quarterback. He threw 3 picks that were horrible in that UNLV. He's awful.
Yep.
He's got to be benched. I don't know why they just keep – I guess he's had the job for 3 years. They're just like he'll keep it, and he keeps making horrible decisions in clutch moments. The defense just got gashed. UNLV's got a pretty good offense, but they just went up and down on him. I know they're desperate for a first win, but nothing's changed in this UTEP team right now, at least, that I want to back him, especially with Hardison at quarterback. I just know he's going to make a huge mistake. So it's La Tech or just don't play it, because I don't know when here UTEP's going to win a game or look different or look better on both sides of the football. So I agree. Play Turner.
Yeah, play Turner. Yeah, come on here. Exactly. Let's make the right decision here, and let's get Jack Turner back at quarterback on the road against, like I said, a pretty solid Nebraska defense. I thought he showed you something here. So let's go, Sonny Cumbie. Don't be an idiot now. Don't be Josh McDaniels. Do the right thing here.
Oh man,
we'll get to that, and I'm going to comment on that, by the way, at the end of the show once we do all the game breakdowns. I do want to talk about the monstrosity last night in the Steelers-Raiders game, even though this is a college football show. But yeah, Louisiana Tech, definitely. For both of us, it's Bulldogs or nothing here. All right, Utah and Oregon State. We've got Oregon State 3-point home favorites in Corvallis, 44.5, 45 being the total in this game. This actually opened Oregon State, Conor, 1.5-point home favorites, now up to 3. I understand why. And look, I liked Utah last week. Against UCLA. I stuck with with Utah, even with Cam Rising out again, because look, Nate Johnson's a capable quarterback. They interchange Barnes in there as well. And more than anything, Utah's got that New York Jets component to them this season, where their defense is good enough to win them football games. And that's exactly what we saw from them. They completely smothered both Garbers and Dante Moore, the 2 quarterbacks for UCLA last week. It was just a dominant defensive effort from Utah. I can't say enough how good they were. And that's now 2 home games in a row. And it's tough to beat Utah at home at Rice-Eccles Stadium there in Salt Lake. But that's now 2 home games against solid enough competition. Florida in the opener, UCLA last Saturday, where Kyle Whittingham, even without his starting quarterback, he has coached the fuck out of this team to get them prepared, good game plan, everybody ready to go, next man up mentality. He is just an outstanding college football coach. And I say that every game we talk about Utah, but it's so true. He's done such a great job. And to have them just playing that well this year multiple times without not just any starting quarterback, a really good one, in Cam Rising, tells you just how well this guy can coach. So they're playing well, Utah. They've shown that the ability to still win games. I mean, here they are 4-0, undefeated, without Cam Rising playing a single snap so far this season. Speaks volumes about this Utah team. But they are going to a tough environment, tough place to play. There's going to be some people that back Utah here. I know it. +3, undefeated team, playing great football, finding ways to win. And it's tough to go against Utah anywhere right now. But I still am a little more leery of Utah on the road. Keep in mind at Baylor, they snuck out of there with a win in the one road game they've played this year, 20-13. That was not an easy game. They could have lost that game. They needed a late score to put that game away. They're not nearly as dominant away from Salt Lake City. And I'm not throwing Oregon State into the garbage can just because they had a bad game on Saturday against, I think now we can officially say, a very good Washington State team. Washington State's really good. Cameron Ward, to me, looks like one of the most improved quarterbacks in college football right now. And he was pretty good last year, but man, he's taken his game to another level. I mean, he's just making all the throws, slicing and dicing what had been an excellent Jonathan Smith coached Oregon State defense prior to Saturday against Washington State. So I think you credit Washington State for a great game and a great offensive performance every bit as much as you criticize Oregon State. And I don't think Oregon State, Connor, is incapable of bouncing back here. Let's not forget this is a tough as fuck place to go in there and beat this Oregon State team. I know DJ Uiagalelei definitely didn't have his best game against Washington State, nor did the defense, which had been very good. But to me, it's a little buyer beware if you're going to take Utah. I would not be on Utah here. I lean Oregon State. It's up to 3 now. Keep that in mind as a home favorite. But I told you last week on this show, I don't like betting against Utah at home. I won't bet against Utah at home. And I kind of feel that way about Oregon State. That has become a really, really tough place for the visitor to come in and try to beat this team. And let's not forget, Utah almost lost at Baylor in the one road game they've had this year. And we know Baylor's no good from everything we've seen to this point. So Oregon State, I understand why they're taking money. I do. What do you think here, C-Mac? Great matchup. Fantastic. Very, very interested to see how it goes Friday night, Utah, Oregon State.
Yeah, it's actually just gone how it's supposed to. All the money here with Oregon State to push this to 3 because it's right. They're just an unbelievable team at home. Now you get this to like 3, maybe this goes 3.5. People want to look Utah's way. And, defense does travel, but Utah, just like Oregon State, you talked about, not the same team on the road. And I worry about the offense and can the defense keep them around, but can they make enough plays to win this game? And I think they maybe can, but that was one of my late plays. I played Washington State, on Saturday. I was going back and forth and they came through. I just kind of faded Oregon State on the road. I was a little surprised. Ward threw for 400 yards on the Oregon State defense. I think this will be better because Utah doesn't have a crazy offense that's going to throw it all over the place. They just don't, not with Rising in there at all. Total's kind of low. I think it's tight. And now I just don't love that it's moved to 3. Oregon State wins this game. I just don't know if you want to lay the field goal now. That's what. Yeah,
it's a great game though. Very, very interesting game. This probably is a low. I think Utah again. It's Cam Rising watch every week. I thought for sure UCLA last week was going to be the week that he came back and still didn't play. So I'm done guessing right now. We'll see. I'll let the week play out before saying on this show, oh, we're going to see Cam Rising back because clearly this injury is taking longer to heal than we thought. So again, keep an eye on that. All right, the final game for Friday night. It's the two new entries to the Big 12 doing battle here: Cincinnati and BYU. We have BYU 3-point home favorites, 49.5, 50 the total. Both of them played Big 12 conference games last week. BYU losing at Kansas, Cincinnati losing at home against Oklahoma. Tough matchups. I figured Cincinnati was not going to be able to do well with Oklahoma. And actually, defensively, I thought they played okay, but their offense could not move the football against a much improved Oklahoma defense.
They moved it, though. They couldn't score. They missed a couple field goals, some Yeah, that was rough to watch.
Yeah, they couldn't finish drives. They did. They had some yardage on offense, but you're right. They could not finish drives. And again, only ending up with 6 points in the loss against Oklahoma. BYU shredded on defense once again. And anytime they face a capable offense, there's just not that same defense. Kalani Sitake just does not have a great defense. I mean, anytime they've played a good offense this year, they've given up 69 points to the combination of Kansas and Arkansas. And remember, before that, they played Southern Utah and Sam Houston State, who we've already talked about. It's one of the worst, maybe, offense in college football right now. So I don't think this BYU defense is great. They don't have the athleticism they've had in the past. I've noticed that. I will say this. Keaton Slovis has played decent football the last 2 weeks, although he's still not a quarterback that I'm fully enamored with, as far as BYU is concerned. I think when you look at BYU as well going into this matchup, when you look at them, they haven't been able to run the ball here, BYU. This is incredible. This is a team that's pounded the rock, physicality, especially along the offensive line. And look what they're doing running the ball this year. 61.2 rushing yards per game, 2.2 yards per carry. Last I checked, Kansas is an okay defense, but it's not great. I think you could put Arkansas into that same boat. And then they face 2 easy opponents, and yet they still can't run the football, BYU. Going into this game. And Cincinnati's run defense has only given up 3.5 yards per carry. So my thinking here is, if they can't run the football well, that's a problem. That's a concern for me here going against this Cincinnati team. I've been anti-BYU much of the season. I've not been, really wanting to back this team, and I'm not laying 3 with BYU here. Now, I don't know if I'm going to get there with Cincinnati, but I'm definitely leaning to the Bearcats here. In this matchup, getting 3 points in this game. I think the critical thing to watch for is Cincinnati's offense got humbled last week by Oklahoma. Let's not forget that. But before that, we'd seen this offense perform at a reasonably solid level, and it's a quarterback that's been around the block. Talking about Emory Jones, who was once at Florida, if you'll remember, briefly at Arizona State as well. And the numbers on the season here for Emory Jones, 62% completions, solid enough numbers so far from him. He's had 7 touchdowns, has had 5 interceptions. 2 of them came against Oklahoma. He does need to take better care of the football, but his athleticism at the quarterback spot, like I say, I just don't see athleticism on this BYU team compared to what they've had in years past. So that could be a problem for the Cougars in this game. So right now, leaning Cincy +3. Even though, Friday night home game, BYU's never an easy venue, but I just don't think all that highly right now of BYU compared to past years. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, that Cincinnati to get that cover with the hook they did move the ball. And on the flip side with the defense, you mentioned Emory Jones made some mistakes. They could have made some kicks, and in the end couldn't score points. The defense kind of got gashed, but they made enough stops, at times in that Oklahoma game where, they did give up a ton of yards, but had some big plays. They still have a pretty good defensive line, the Cincinnati. I got to think, you talked about BYU not running the football. I think they're just going to throw it here, and that's where they'll find success. I look to the total in this game, here at 50 or so, I look over. These teams have gotten there, and I know they didn't score a bunch, but I think BYU and Slovis can throw it a little bit, and I think Emory Jones and his team will score more points than 6, and we could get this game over.
I think there's something to that. I would certainly not talk anyone out of the over here because, look, I know BYU or Cincinnati's game last week stayed under the total, but they did move the ball. There was yardage for Cincinnati. It's just that they had trouble finishing drives. They missed some field goals. Their 4th down conversion failures, they had a couple of those as well. Against a really good defense, and I don't think BYU's defense is anywhere close to Oklahoma, and we've seen that on display the last 2 weeks. So that 50.5, it's actually 49.5, 50, in a lot of books right now. I could see going over the total here.
And they ran it. Kansas ran for like 220.
Yeah.
On BYU. Cincinnati should be able to run it with Emory Jones and the running back. So.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the over could be in play there, no question. All right, we're going to turn our attention now. Before we actually turn our attention to the Saturday games, shout out to everyone in the chat. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of usual names: Al Chervik, Rance, Daryl Turner, Troy Torrance, who's doing great work this NFL season. Great start, great job with Jimmy the Bag Tuesday night on Bankroll Blitz, the NFL show, 8 p.m. Eastern. Check that out. Dabby Cab, who's all over the channel, the Medicate Monday show. You can go on and on and on. Live streams, all that. He appears on Jose's baseball show as a guest, Betting with the Bag as a guest. Shout out to Dabby Cab, EQ, Ronnie and Bergia, Andrew G, everyone, Star Child, Jimmy Gomez, Kong's Clips, Truth Teller, J Smooth 16, everyone in the chat. Thanks for tuning in here live to Hitting the Books each and every Monday during the college football season, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. All right, moving on to Saturday, Penn State and Northwestern. We've got Penn State 25.5-point road favorites here, 46 being the total in this game. I mean, you talk about, NFL sometimes that saying anything can happen. Well, it can apply to college football too. Make no mistake about it. Northwestern was left for dead Saturday against Minnesota. It was not looking good for them at all. They were down 24-7 in that game, and they were down 31-10 going into the fourth quarter alone. And Northwestern with just this incredible comeback, down by 21 to Minnesota. And Ben Bryant, the quarterback, terrific game. I mean, almost 400 passing yards, 33 for 49, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Terrific effort. And it was pretty much all through the air, which is an indictment of this Minnesota secondary. They got absolutely torched, especially in the fourth quarter in that Northwestern comeback. It's a brutal loss for Minnesota. Kaliakmanis was okay, but not great. He was very efficient, 14 of 19, but only 191 yards. I'm still not sold on him. And they did run the football down Northwestern's throat, 198 rushing yards for Minnesota, but their defense just got ripped through the air. Maybe they sat back too much, but that's a horrible loss for Minnesota. But it is an incredible comeback and a gutsy one by Northwestern. We do need to give them their credit. That's a terrific performance. These kids have been through the fucking ringer this whole entire offseason and so far this year with the Pat Fitzgerald shit, the hazing stuff, that scandal going down. They lose their head coach suddenly just weeks before the season. They got a makeshift coaching staff taken over here at Northwestern. Hell, they've got Skip Holtz, former Louisiana Tech coach, current USFL head coach, helping them out on the coaching staff because they're in such dire straits. And for them to pull off that kind of comeback, never quit, with everything they've gone through mentally off the field as well the last few months, tip of the cap to Northwestern. Well done. Outstanding job. And they deserve all the credit coming back like that against Minnesota. But here's the problem now. Huge win, credit to them. And they also had a great win against UTEP, but UTEP's no good. Now you got to try to come back from that game and take on this excellent Penn State team. And they just haven't faced anyone quite as good as Penn State so far this year. Duke's they're the next best team they've played. And at Duke, they lost 38-14, and they failed to cover in that game. So this is a tough spot. You're off that huge comeback win. Now you are at home. And, Penn State on the road can still be a little dicey proposition for me. I mean, the Illinois game, which was their only road game this year, they barely covered. They did cover. They're perfect 4-0 ATS this year, Penn State, but barely. 30-13. And that was a game where Luke Altmaier, the quarterback for Illinois, he threw more to Penn State.
4 picks, yeah.
Players wearing a Penn State jersey more than his own team in that game. So keep that in mind. So it's a tough game. I'm not really rushing to lay almost 4 touchdowns with Penn State. Coming off a big home win against Iowa, national TV game on CBS Saturday night. They dominated that pathetic Iowa offense. Not at all surprised by that. And the concern for Northwestern, too, is if you're going to give up 200 rushing yards to Minnesota last week, even though they won, what are you going to give up here to Singleton and this stable of great running backs that Penn State has at their disposal? Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, Trey Potts. I mean, they go 3 deep in the running back spot, and they're all very good, to support Drew Aller at the quarterback spot. So I worry about that a little bit for Northwestern. That run defense was horrible, and it's been not very good all year. And now you got to face this great backfield of Penn State. How will they fare? I'm worried about that matchup here. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, I mean, that was, just good to see Northwestern. I mean, their defense gave up a ton, but for that comeback with Bryant, almost for 400 yards for Northwestern, that was, just a big win for them. And I was on it, so I was happy that it came through there in OT. Penn State just, blew out Iowa. They can't. That offense is horrible, but they are on the road. This is different. I would just, in this game, look to Penn State's team total. I just wouldn't mess around with laying 4 touchdowns. It's not what I love to do. We've seen some teams, like you mentioned, they did get the cover with Illinois, but these big teams go on the road and they're just not the same as, as these home atmosphere games. They're sometimes a little, asleep. So, but I still think they get the points. This Northwestern team's not the same defense as years past. So look for Penn State's team total.
Yeah, that might be a good bet still. Even with Penn State off the game against Iowa, I worry about Northwestern's defense here. I really do. And even in the win against Minnesota, they gave up 34 points. They gave up 38 to Duke. They gave up 24 to Rutgers. You know what I mean? I mean, those are big points too. And now you're facing probably a more balanced offense. And again, the run defense for Northwestern, I talked about how bad it was against Minnesota, even though they won. I mean, they're giving up 184.5 rushing yards per game at almost 5 yards per carry against Singleton and Katron Allen and that group of running backs for Penn State. That worries me big time for Northwestern in this matchup. All right, next up here on Saturday, we've got Clemson and Syracuse. Clemson, 7-point road favorites, 52.5 the total. This is one of my favorite sides for this week in college football. I'm on the home underdog here, Syracuse plus the 7. First of all, you've got Clemson now, second loss, and just a heartbreaking loss. It was a back and forth game, winnable game, the big showdown with Florida State. They led the most of that game. And for Clemson, they're going to feel like they let one get away. They led most of that game. It felt like Florida State was fighting uphill, swimming upstream that entire game. And yet Florida State still snatches victory at the end. And Clemson, look, they couldn't execute on either side of the ball. They couldn't stop Florida State when they needed to stop. Obviously, they had the kicking issues. They had to call in this kicker, former kicker of the team that was actually, now in the business world, and they call him up to be an emergency starting kicker. And as you could see, he was not ready for the big moment there to kick that field goal late in the game for Clemson. And sure enough, that was part of the reason they ended up losing that game. But again, and Cade Klubnik, I thought for a large part of that game against a pretty good Florida State team, he played well. I'll give Cade Klubnik his due. He played a pretty solid game overall, but at crunch time, just couldn't make those key plays to win the football game on offense. Those key throws, those key moments where you need your quarterback to come through for you. He couldn't, and Jordan Travis did for the Florida State Seminoles. And that was the difference in the end of that game. And I have to say it, and I'll say it on Twitter. It's time we start giving out roses to Dabo Swinney. That coaching staff was a disaster down the stretch of that game with play calling, with game management, managing the clock. How the hell do you not get off a play late in the fourth quarter before it gets to overtime? That is so bad that they allowed that to happen.
Why did they run the ball?
Yeah.
On those last 2 plays for 1 yard? I don't know why they're throwing it. Idiots.
I mean, that is so bad. And now this, and I don't like it. I don't like the hires he's made at coordinator these last few years. Ever since Venables left, this has been not a sinking ship, but these coordinators have not impressed me offensively or defensively for Clemson. So you got to wonder how, Dabo's still getting the talent, but we're seeing some problems with him in terms of, adjustments. We're seeing problems with him managing the clock, managing the game. Play calling's an issue on both sides of the ball. What the hell was that on the 4th down play to try to stay alive in overtime of that game against Florida State? I mean, just disappointing, and it's gotten worse. And you had Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence to bail you out with some of these, coordinator and coaching issues and game management issues. You don't have that anymore, and it's kind of exposing Clemson a little bit. They're still a very good team, but elite not this year. I'm not saying they can't get back there next year, 2 years from now, but it's not an elite Clemson team this year. It's not. And it certainly wasn't last year either. I worry about the mindset after a crushing loss like this. Now there are 2 losses this season, both ACC losses as well. Keep that in mind. So all of a sudden they're out of the championship picture. They're going to be in an uphill battle to be in the ACC championship game. All of a sudden you're looking at a much more minor bowl game potentially for Clemson this year than they're used to. And I know that's something that's got to stick in their minds. Like, we're going to be busting our ass the rest of the season for a more minor bowl game. That's not the Clemson way of the last decade. We're winning this conference. We're owning this conference. We're in the championship picture. We're in the playoff. Not this year. Playoff, no. Maybe ACC championship, no. I worry about this team's psyche now. Going on the road, a tough loss like that last week, and facing a Syracuse team that, to me, has done nothing wrong this year. They've looked very good. I love Schrader at quarterback. They struggled early in that game, but, man, whatever was said in the second half or whatever adjustments they made, because they did have a sluggish first half against Army, man, they came alive, and it was bing, bang, boom. Every time they had the ball, it felt like they scored in the second half against Army. That's what that offense is very capable of. They'll be fired up, even with Clemson showing some warts this year and some chinks in the armor. Syracuse is still going to be amped up to host Clemson in this game. And look, there's been better Clemson teams and there's been worse Syracuse teams where Syracuse has still given Clemson a tough game. Look at the recent head-to-head series. I mean, 6-point game last year at Clemson, Syracuse covers. 3-point win for Syracuse, or for Clemson at Syracuse 2 years ago. Syracuse covers. They have really, especially the last 2 years, we've seen a 6-point and a 3-point game down to the wire. Too many points, especially in this dubious spot for Clemson here. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, I agree. It's been their problem. They've had a few like blowouts in the mixer in the 10 years, but even when they were really good and Syracuse was down, this is a trouble game for Clemson. Yeah, the play calling was just not good in that second half. And it just seemed like they finally kind of are losing these games. Clemson in the past would win those tight games, and they didn't against Florida State. And shout out to Florida State, still undefeated. But yeah, I think this is a kind of a bad matchup. Clemson's still a Shipley. They have some good dynamic. Their tight ends are good. Their receivers, so they should be able to move the ball. But Syracuse here at home with Schrader, and they were asleep. I was like, what's going on with Syracuse that first half, that first quarter? But you just said it. They woke up. I think they'll be able to move the ball. This is too many points at home. I agree with you here. Give me Syracuse.
Well, and they've got issues on the offense too, because you mentioned it. I like Shipley at running back, and I like Jake Brenningstool. He's a really good tight end for Clemson, big guy. But the receiving core is down this year, and the guys that they count on, both of them may not play. Cole Turner's out for the season. That was a huge injury, that they suffered a couple weeks ago against Florida Atlantic. Antonio Williams for Clemson as well, day-to-day ankle injury, suffered as well. Keep that in mind. Also, Tyler Brown, who actually stepped up, Bo Collins, some of these guys that stepped up for them, they got banged up a little bit in that Florida State game as well. It was a physical game. So I worry about that here for Clemson going to Syracuse. Keep an eye on that receiving core, which, again, has been a little bit of it's not as great a receiving core as sometimes we've seen out of Clemson in years past. All right, next up, we've got Pittsburgh and Virginia Tech. Pitt, 2.5-point road favorites in this game, 42.5 the total. This is a really tough game. I'm still not really looking to lay points on the road with Pittsburgh, based on what I have seen this year from the Panthers. Virginia Tech, though, is very disappointing against Marshall. Maybe it's not the same Va Tech defense this year, because Marshall is really having their way through much of that football game last week, 24-17 loss. That's now 3 straight losses for Virginia Tech, 0-3 straight up, 0-3 against the spread since that opening win against Old Dominion. Meanwhile, you look at Pitt, 0-3 straight up, 0-3 against the spread against FBS competition, losses to Cincinnati, West Virginia, and blown out by North Carolina. Couldn't stop Drake May and the Tar Heels last week. So this is a pick your poison. How do you lay points on the road with Pitt, but how do you trust Virginia Tech? They're not all that much better. I guess flip a coin type of game, and Virginia Tech at home. For that reason, I'll lean slightly to Virginia Tech, but I don't know if this is a game I'm going to get involved with. Connor, what do you think?
This is ugly. As normally, I would look to Virginia Tech, and I guess a little bit. North Carolina still got it done. Pittsburgh scored, was trying to hang around there. Phil Dracovic, though, laying points on the road with this Pitt team, I can't do it. I really don't want anything with this one. This is a pass.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that's a good decision. And you talk about quarterback. Actually, he was a little bit better. When you look at the quarterback play from, it's interesting because last week Dracovic gets injured for Pittsburgh. Christian Bayou has to take over in that game. And Dracovic is questionable right now for this game. But Dracovic, again, has kind of been up and down all over the place. Bayou, does he have enough experience now is the question. Keep in mind, this is Virginia Tech home game at night. It's an 8 p.m. Eastern kickoff, and the night games are always more of an environment there. The Enter Sandman when they come out to the field and all that. So I'd probably lean Virginia Tech, but I just don't know if I'm going to stomach
this program, though. It's just it's tough to see it going down.
Yeah, it is. Frank Beamer not happy right now, I'm sure, with seeing what he built, and it hasn't been anywhere close to as good with Virginia Tech since he retired. All right, Indiana and Maryland, a Big Ten matchup. Maryland, 14-point home favorites, 50 the total. It's not a good sign for Tom Allen when you're barely beating Akron at home in overtime. Although that being said, Akron is better this year. That would have been so sweet for Akron to win that game because I'm sitting on over 3.5 wins with their win total this year. That would have been a monster to get that, an upset win against Indiana for the win total. But Indiana survives with the win against Akron. Tavian Jackson, I'm telling you what, the quarterback, Tavian Jackson, the quarterback here for Indiana, man, he scuffled his way through the majority of that game against Akron. We'll see if he can play a little bit more consistently here this week against Maryland. Maryland, I've been impressed with Maryland the last couple of games since the halftime of the Virginia game because they didn't play great against Charlotte. They struggled in the first half against Virginia, but they woke up in the second half and they blew the doors off Virginia in the second half. And they took care of business as they should have. I laid the points on the road with Maryland against Michigan State. We talked about it. Michigan State's in total disarray now since the Mel Tucker shit went down. And it has shown, and Maryland had their way pretty much that entire football game with Michigan State. A very, very solid, workmanlike 31-9 win for Maryland. Still undefeated on the season here. I think this could get ugly for Indiana. Like if Indiana, plays the kind of offense and struggles on offense to the extent they did against Akron, they're going to be in trouble here in this game going on the road. And they have not played a true road game yet this year either. That's something to point out as well. Every game they've played, Ohio State, Indiana State, Louisville, and Akron, they've all been in the state of Indiana. So they're finally going out of the state for the first time here. And Maryland looks like they're coming along nicely here. I'm not saying I'll lay 14, but it's a favorite or pass type of spot for me. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, it's tough because their schedule's kind of been easy. They go to Michigan State, like you talked about, it's horrible. Easily beat them, which they should have. Like come back home and should win this game here with Tua. I don't know what to make of Indiana. You mentioned this is our first road game. I haven't seen a ton. We know they have trouble moving the ball. They cover against Ohio State. Ohio State, that was early, 23-3. And they were down that Louisville game, right? And they came back, covered that game in the second half. Can their defense keep them in the game? That's what it's going to have to be, I think. Can their defense, kind of keep them around? Because I just don't love this offense enough. If this keeps moving, I just don't know if I want to take Indiana on the road. But if this keeps moving maybe to Maryland later in the week, I could look at Indiana.
Yeah, it's just, you're right. Indiana's played a couple of teams that are tougher than what we've seen from Maryland so far. But again, now you're going.
And they have the Akron game.
Yeah.
It's last week. It's just, and on the road now. Exactly.
Yeah, this is even from a total standpoint, because I could make a case for the over because the last two Indiana-Maryland games the last 2 years, they've been shootouts. Tons of points in both of them. 50 might look a little light because I think Maryland will certainly score. The question is going to be, what are you going to get out of Indiana in this game offensively? But if you trust them more than I do, I maybe lean over here with the total being where it is here, just at the 50 range. All right, Baylor and UCF next up. Big 12 matchup. Of course, UCF in the Big 12 for the first time this season. UCF 11.5-point home favorites, 55 the total in this game. First home game, first Big 12 conference home game for UCF. I personally think they beat the shit out of Baylor here in this game. I mean, the more I look out at Baylor, the more I see a program that's just in significant decline at the moment. I mean, just does not look good. They haven't covered a point spread this year. Even the win against Long Island, that FCS win, they didn't cover the point spread there. They lose to Utah. Texas State, the 27.5-point favorite, outright loss to the Bobcats, absolutely taken apart by Texas last week, 38-6. And I'm disappointed I didn't lay it with Texas. I'm always leery of laying like almost 17 with a team on the road in a rivalry game like that. But I figured Baylor was going to be in tough and didn't pull the trigger. So I'm disappointed. They're at the bounce house here, as they call it, UCF Orlando. First conference home game. Good spot, too, because they, had a tough game against Kansas State, 44-30, when their defense got sliced. But Kansas State's offense can do that to you, especially at home with Will Howard and with Giddens. DJ Giddens running the ball. Terrific game. Great balance in the Kansas State offense, and it was on the road. Tough environment. I think here against a Baylor offense that's not exactly lighting it up right now, and that's putting it mildly. And I can't say that Baylor's offense, there's people saying, well, they don't have their starting quarterback. I don't know if they'd be all that much better with Blake Shapen. It's not like they were lighting it up when they had him at quarterback, but clearly with Sawyer Robertson, look, he got benched in that game. RJ Martinez came in with Baylor, and look, he didn't play very good either, quite honestly, Martinez, but at least he didn't have the horrible mistakes that Sawyer Robertson had in this game. So Dave Aranda's got a tough decision here. Sawyer Robertson, or does he go to AJ Martinez? And when Martinez didn't exactly move the team on offense either. So two quarterbacks, he may not have any, quite honestly, because I don't trust either of them here going on the road against UCF. I'm very close to laying the points here with UCF. It's certainly the only side I would look at here in this game. Even with the defense struggling against K-State, this is not Kansas State's offense that they're dealing with here with Baylor. Baylor cannot move the football right now. So I think it's a good matchup here for Central Florida to kind of get right. And to be honest with you, we know John Rice Plumlee out multiple weeks with the leg injury, which means it's Timmy McClain's team at quarterback. I think he's capable still. 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He protected the football for the most part. He relied on the run game, and it's still a run-first offense, obviously under Gus Malzahn. And then you look at the Baylor defense going into this game, and the Baylor defense, as far as the rush, it's been brutal. 171 rush yards per game allowed, 4.6 yards per carry. They cannot stop the run, and that's exactly what UCF is going to be looking to do. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, that's exactly. Even with McClain here, at home, run it. I mean, I know it's K-State home, but 281 again. The Baylor defense just got gashed. I don't know what they do here, but I think the number, is right. I kind of lean to lay it with UCF, just how bad Baylor is. But with their backup in, I think it's there. Can Baylor do anything? Whoever's at quarterback, who you're talking about, Robertson. I just don't know. This Baylor team's just on a free fall. They can't even cover a number. So they're not to be back, not to be trusted right now. So I agree a little bit. Initially, I'd lean here to lay it with UCF.
Yeah, I think good matchup, and I think they're going to want to play well and maybe show out. And if they can run up a little score here, if they have the opportunity, they might, because it's the first Big 12 home game for UCF as a member of the Big 12. So I think a special environment it will be at Orlando for this game. All right, South Kakalaki and Tennessee. Tennessee 12.5-point home favorite, 62 the total. Man, South Carolina gave me a heart attack Saturday night with that game against me. It was one of my favorite sides, laying the 5.5, 6 with South Carolina. And man, every time Rattler and the offense, they went up and down the field against Mississippi State. Mississippi State couldn't stop South Carolina, but man,
they're awful.
Secondary, South Carolina was picked apart by Will Rogers. I mean, some bad breakdowns, bad busts in the secondary from South Carolina allowed Mississippi State to keep hanging around in that game, but eventually it ended well. South Carolina got the point spread cover in the victory over Mississippi State, barely, but they got it, which was all that matters in the end. But now they got to go on the road here against Tennessee. We'll see how they fare in this one. Tennessee, look, I know Jose, our producer in the background, tough to see what happened to his UTSA team over the weekend, but it was just a bad matchup. No Frank Harris, no chance against Tennessee off a bad game against Florida too. So they were going to be chomping at the bit to bounce back. And sure enough, 45-14 beatdown over UTSA. That Marburger kid, he can't play. I've seen enough. He cannot play football at the college level. He's terrible. Eddie Lee Marburger, Eddie Lee Hamburger is what I would call him after that. That's what he should be doing, flipping hamburgers at Wendy's or something, not playing college football right now. He was terrible in that game. And look, actually, I'll give Owen McCowan credit. Took over for UTSA in the second half and actually brought UTSA back into that game a little bit, but it was too little too late. 45-14 for Tennessee in that one. Good bounce back game. But now they got to lay double digits here against a South Carolina team that obviously defensively in the 37-30 win against Mississippi State, they had their struggles. But South Carolina has covered 3 in a row. Double-digit home favorites here, Tennessee. Can we trust them? I know they got it done last week, but, and against Virginia they did. But South Carolina is better than UTSA and Virginia. The two teams that Tennessee did cover as home favorites. So that's a lot of points to be given a capable offense, too, because the one thing we've seen out of Spencer Rattler here for South Carolina is last few weeks they've been pretty good on the offensive side of the football here in recent games. Even against Georgia, I thought they played okay, on offense against a really good defense. So I'm kind of leaning South Carolina here at getting this number. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, that was stressful, South Carolina just covering. And I wish, I unloaded the first half bet on Tennessee. I just didn't go big enough on that. And it was like 21-0, seemed like in a flash. And UTSA, yeah, Jose, there's problems at UTSA right now. Tennessee back here at home. I think the number's just out there. And I think even if South Carolina, the back door, I wonder what defense comes to play. I know Georgia turned it on, but I thought their defense looked good early on versus Georgia. And then last week, they just get into the shootout and just kind of bad play at times for both teams, South Carolina and Mississippi State. But I think it's given a team like South Carolina just too many in this one. I'm going to look at it more, but I'm leaning the points here. I think it's just a little bit too much in this one.
And South Carolina does not have a very good secondary. I will say that. I've seen enough now to know that. North Carolina picked them apart earlier this season, and Will Rogers did last week. But Tennessee is more reliant on the run game this year with Joe Milton at quarterback. Joe Milton's an okay passing quarterback, but he's not Joe Montana, or anything. He's not Peyton Manning, former Tennessee Volunteer, that's for sure. And South Carolina is better stopping the run. The better part of the South Carolina defense is against the run. They're better against the run. So that's why I think they might be able to hang around, because Tennessee does prefer a little more run than pass, and South Carolina is better against the run than they are against the pass on defense. So I am leaning here to South Carolina a little bit. All right, next up, we've got Florida, Kentucky. It is Kentucky 2.5 3-point home favorites, 46 the total in this one. Very interesting matchup because we know Georgia's the king of the SEC East. We know that. But you can make a case, Kentucky is up there, in the pecking order. I think now you got to actually elevate Florida a little bit, with the way they've played this year. Other than the loss at Utah, their only loss, they took care of business in the other 3 games, including a big home win as 4.5-point home dogs against Tennessee. But now you got to go on the road, and we've only seen one bit of evidence of Florida on the road, and it was not pretty for Graham Mertz and the Gators offense, only scoring 11 points. Great Utah defense, we know that. But can they do it here at Kentucky? I like what I see from Kentucky. What I like from Kentucky is they've got the experience at quarterback with Devin Leary, the NC State transfer. They've got Ray Davis and Juton McClain in the backfield. They've got a pretty good receiving core. Barry Brown is definitely someone to watch out for. Great receiver here for Kentucky. They've won all 4 games. Now the schedule's been a little light here. Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron, a Vanderbilt team that has played nowhere close to as good as we thought they might this season. And Kentucky whipped them 45-28 in that game. So this is going to be an interesting matchup. Florida, definitely a team that we think of wants to run the football a little bit more than throw it. The run game for Florida is 4.4 yards per carry, 164.8 yards per game. Kentucky's run defense has been very good, but they've also faced a weaker schedule. Keep that in mind. But still, the run defense for Kentucky's been very good. The way I see it is Graham Mertz is probably going to have to make some plays. Graham Mertz is going to have to, try to move the football in the pocket. And he has shown a greater ability this year to run more. Not that he's running a lot, but he's doing it a little bit more this year under Billy Napier here at Florida than he did at Kentucky. And I definitely think when you look at the matchup, Kentucky's run defense pretty solid. He's going to have to make some throws in a tough environment on the road to win this game. I don't trust him yet. And I know he faced Utah, probably a better defense than what Kentucky has, better team, but I got to see it on the road before I'm ready to trust Florida in a price range, Connor, where they have to win to cover a point spread and win to cash a ticket. I don't trust them just yet. So the lean is Kentucky, and someone in the chat liking the over. I kind of lean that way too. It's pretty low. And I think Florida has shown some glimpses of good play on offense at times. I don't think their defense is still great, Florida, by any stretch. And I think you could even say that about Kentucky's defense. Keep in mind, Kentucky has not faced any sort of good offense really yet this year other than Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt got to 28, against that Kentucky defense. So 46, I probably would lean over here. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, but I do think Florida's defense is pretty good. Held Tennessee. They did have more yards in that game and probably should have scored some more points. And then last week, they only scored 22, but only gave up 7 to Charlotte. This used to be Florida would just mop Kentucky. But, 3 of the last 5 years, Kentucky's beat them. So they're live. I don't just make of it. They got a bunch of turnovers early, jumped on Vandy. And then, even Leary had some picks and kind of let him hang around. We just talked about he scored 28, did Vandy at home. I'd rather have the better defense. And, Kentucky just hasn't played anybody if you went through. These have just been cakewalk games. Last year they started 5-0. This would be a big win. But I'd rather have right now, as I see a little bit of the better defense. It's just a lean to Florida, but I don't know if I get around to bet it.
Yeah, this is an interesting game because I don't think Kentucky's been good. I think people thought Kentucky would definitely be better than Florida this year, but Kentucky has played good but not great with a light schedule. Florida has played a little bit better than people expected, and they had Tennessee and Utah, on their schedule already. So that's what makes this – it's not a shoe-in for me that I'm jumping to take Kentucky here. But before the season, if you would have told me in this game Kentucky's only laying 2.5 at home, I would have jumped on it. I'm not jumping on it as much right now, but I still lean to Kentucky here, less than a field goal at home. And by the way, I know there's people that buy into this theory. The ranked team, road underdog against an unranked home favorite, and people bet the unranked home favorite, in these kind of spots. I'm not saying that means Kentucky's going to win and cover, but there's a lot of people that subscribe to that theory. You take the small unranked home favorite against the ranked underdog. And we'll see if that comes through here with Kentucky against Florida. All right, next up with Notre Dame and Duke. This is the big Saturday night game on ABC. Game day, college game day going to Duke, the campus of Duke, and it's for football, not basketball. Wow, that tells you something right there. Duke football is going places right now. Notre Dame, 6-point road favorites, 50 the total. Money's coming in on Notre Dame, 4.5 up to 5.5 up to 6. So obviously the betting markets think Notre Dame can pick themselves up off the mat following just a gut-wrenching loss to Ohio State. I mean, that was a coin flip game. It was very even. It could have gone either way. It's not like, they dominated the game and lost. That's not the case. It was a coin flip. It was back and forth. It was a very, very competitive game. It's just the way they lost it was tough. Final play of the game, 1 second to go. They run it in for the game-winning touchdown. And Notre Dame with a tough loss there to Ohio State. Can they bounce back here against Duke? It ends up being the question. Duke, meanwhile, we've seen them, already this year, in a primetime spot against Clemson, very first week of the season. They found a way to get the job done. Now, again, lots of turnovers, mistakes, red zone problems, implosions by Clemson in that game, but still give Duke credit. I'm not rushing to lay this kind of points with Notre Dame here in this spot. I'm not there with Duke yet, but man, if a 7 pops up, and this is already up to 6, and certainly if it hits 7, I'm on Duke. Until then, I'm kind of leaning Duke, but not as into it as far as taking Duke here plus the points. One thing I want to point out though about Duke, they played Northwestern, UConn, and Lafayette the last 3 weeks. The only kind of good offense they've played, and I'd say it's a good offense, but not a great offense, is that Clemson game to start the year. I think Notre Dame is probably the best offense Duke's played. So I kind of lean to this over here, and I think Duke can move the football here a little bit against. Now, Notre Dame's defense was very good against Ohio State, but when I think of losing a game like that, And I think maybe a little bit of a hangover, it could show up on the defensive side of the football. And Riley Leonard's no joke. This kid can play. He is a really, really good quarterback. He's having a very solid season so far for the Duke Blue Devils. I'm bringing up the numbers, 67% completions. And what I like about his play is no interceptions through 4 games. He has taken care of the football. That's what you want to see. Lean Duke, lean over. Connor, what do you think here? Big Saturday night match.
Yeah, this is a huge matchup. And it's, the Clemson win, and like Duke just keeps taking care of business. Where it's like, they're laying 3 touchdowns, and UConn is even down a little bit, it seems like, from last year. They can't move the ball, but just went in there, took care of business right away. Maybe those would, tighter games, this would be over the touchdown already instead of at 5.5. Yeah, if you watch this show, I'm a big Riley Leonard fan. Notre Dame defense was very good, and what a tough loss there at the end of that football game. I thought, just a good football game, period. Clean, no turnovers. The yardage was about the same. One thing is, can Duke, you mentioned this, Notre Dame defense, can they run it? Because they've been able to run it on all these teams. They even ran it on Clemson. They're averaging 240 yards rushing. If they can do that, they're in it. One thing, Notre Dame, though, at least ATS has been very good against the ACC. I think they're 8-0 or 9-0, depending on, each number. But they've kind of to own it, own the number. 5.5, though, it's a touchdown win. I don't know. I'm going to sit on this one a little bit more as the week goes.
Yeah, it's a really, really intriguing game. Very interested to see how it plays out. Great matchup of quarterbacks, too, obviously. When you think Sam Hartman on one side, Riley Leonard on the other side, I'm looking forward to seeing that. Keep in mind, there's some questions. There's, Jaden Thomas questionable, Deion Colsey out. There's some cluster injuries developing for Notre Dame at receiver going into this game. So keep that in mind.
And that's been a problem to start the year.
Yep.
And last week
they're not deep at receiver. You're right. Yep.
They're not. They're going to be pumped though, Duke here at home. Huge game. I'm leaning to the points. You're just early.
And man, I can't. I'm thinking off the top of my head, but what the record's been. But I know for a fact Duke is an underdog. It's been unbelievable against the spread how good they've been as an underdog. I think I'm just looking at the last 5 tries as a dog, including the Clemson game earlier this year. 5-0 ATS. Last 5 tries they've been an underdog. And if you go back probably to the start of last year, it's an even better record than that. So it's tough to lay points against this Duke team. It has been proven here the last year and a bit. And what a job Mike Elko continues to do with this program from a coaching standpoint. All right, South Alabama and James Madison, a very good under-the-radar group of 5 game on Saturday. James Madison, 3-point home favorites, 51.5 the total in this game. I agree with the initial move to South Alabama. I think it's the better defense, catching points. And James Madison, think about the fucking hectic schedule they've had. Man, it has been, they've gone through the meat grinder. They've been through the ringer, James Madison here the last few games. If you look at their schedule, they had the emotional game against Virginia, which they pulled out 36-35. They played a tough, hard-fought win against a very good Troy team. They go on the road for a 3rd straight week. And there's not many times in a schedule you'll see a team play 3 in a row on the road, but they went at Utah State. They had this huge early lead, and they almost blow it. Well, they actually did blow the lead. Utah State came all the way back from down 38-14, scored 24 unanswered points to tie the game. It was a crazy second half. And then James Madison rescued themselves with the go-ahead touchdown late in the 4th quarter to get a 45-38 win against Utah State. They haven't been great defensively, James Madison, game to game. South Alabama, maybe they're not as good defensively. What is the reason for losing 34-30 to Central Michigan at home as 16.5-point favorites? That was not expected, to be sure, the way they played on the defensive side of the football in that game. But you also dig a little bit deeper into it. They left some points on the board. Certainly defensively, they struggled. You got to wonder, too, if that was a bit of a – they beat Oklahoma State so easily, a Big 12 team, 33-7 the week before. That to me looked more like, wow, it's not South Alabama suddenly bad on defense. We took them lightly. type of deal. That's what it looked like to me watching that game. They were missing tackles left and right, and South Alabama doesn't normally do that. I think they're a better team than that. I don't think I'm throwing them in the garbage can just because of it's a bad loss. It is, obviously. You're 16.5 point favorite against what's supposed to be a bottom of, not a bottom of the barrel, but a below average MAC team, Central Michigan. It's not a good loss at all. But I think they're better than that. And I'll give them a chance to show me that was an anomaly. I agree with the move to South Alabama down to +3.5 in this one. What do you think, Connor?
Both teams, defensively have struggled. I thought that was too many points. Now to lose to Central Michigan, that was big because I thought that was after the big win, we see the trouble Oklahoma State's having. Beat them. They look like they're a little bit back, and they come home and lose to Central Michigan, 34-30. But I think these teams are close. I know James Madison at home here, man, they gave up a ton of points, and most of it in that second half to Utah State, over 500 yards. It's like they played to Troy to that under. Do we get more with these defenses not being good here? I'm sure tackling drills will be a big deal here in practice this week with these two, because is there more fireworks and it gets over? I'm not so sure, but I'm off here. I'd like to take South Alabama. I've just, that defense, which I thought would be a lot better, hasn't been there. Carter Bradley's been, he's been all right so far this year. I'd have to lean the points if I were to take something here on the side.
All right, next up, Big Ten matchup, Michigan and Nebraska. Michigan, 18-point road favorites in Lincoln, 40 the total. Very low total here in this game. Both teams expecting, or the odds makers expecting the defenses to rule. Depending on what number you got with Rutgers or Michigan in that game, 31-7, it was right around the number. But I know Rutgers opened like 26-point dogs and it closed 24. But if you base it on the opening number for that Michigan-Rutgers game last week, Michigan would be 0-4 against the spread this year. They still have not covered a point spread. If you got -24 on Michigan, you pushed. But best case scenario, they're 0-3-1 against the spread this year. It's been proven that these are big numbers that you're being asked to lay with Michigan, and they're not covering these numbers. Their defense is great. Absolutely, we've seen it. But their offense is not finishing drives consistently. We've seen issues with that. J.J. McCarthy's been good, but he's not been great. I like Corum and Edwards, the two running backs, obviously, no question about that. That's what's carrying this offense. It's the run game. Especially, but they have just been priced too highly so far in the betting markets. 0 against the spread to begin the year here for Michigan. And now after the cozy confines of Ann Arbor and the Big House for the 4 games to open the season with East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, and Rutgers, now you're finally going on the road for the first time. Let's see how you handle it here going to Nebraska. Now, look, they absolutely pulverized Nebraska last year, but that was at Ann Arbor, 34-3. Let's not forget that 2 years ago at Nebraska, and remember, Nebraska was still going through all those problems with Scott Frost and not a very good program. Well, Nebraska was only -28 in total yards in that game, and they only lost by 3, 32-29. I'm tempted by Matt Rule and the home dog here. I honestly am. And look, Nebraska has a ton of problems still on offense. Jeff Sims got benched, rightfully so. Absolutely terrible quarterback play from him early in the year. But, man, this Heinrich Haarberg, who is the quarterback right now for Nebraska, he's a work in progress. He is absolutely a work in progress. He is not – it's not been pretty from him. But at least unlike Sims, he's not been a turnover machine. I mean, Sims was just killing Nebraska with all the turnovers. At least Haarberg, even though his completion rate isn't great, accuracy is still a bit of a problem. At least he's not turning the ball over every possession. That's what it was becoming like with Jeff Sims at quarterback for Nebraska. That's going to be critical here for him against a very good Michigan defense. Take care of the ball, no mistakes, don't force anything. Let your defense, and I do think Nebraska's got a pretty solid defense this year from everything I've seen. I like what I've seen from that defense overall so far this year, outside of the Colorado game, but they got, kind of worn down because the offense didn't do anything. And that's the game Sims was just a complete disaster at quarterback for Nebraska. I'm definitely leaning Nebraska here, +18. And as far as the total goes, it's 40. It's low, but it's low for a reason. I don't see points in bunches being scored in this game. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, Michigan, you mentioned it, just not the covering machine with the big numbers so far. Now they hit the road. I think they go in there and win this. I don't know how much, it's similar. He runs the ball. He's not a great passer here with Harburg. Can he be somewhat of a spark with Michigan coming to town? I don't know. I feel like we need even more than what we're getting here. I'd like over 3 touchdowns to really look at Nebraska, even though Michigan has just not run up the score and they're on the road. I'm going to look at it a little more this week. And, we say Nebraska's defense is good. They still gave up like 300 yards to La Tech when Turner came in. I don't know how good the defense is.
It's not. I don't know if it's like good, like really good. It's good as in it's way better than it's been in the past, which is still like it's okay. That's the kind of description of the Nebraska defense. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I can get to the points here with Nebraska. Michigan might just go in there, maybe get their first win ATS. I'm covering number.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm tempted to look at Nebraska though. Again, first road game too. They've had
first road game.
They've had an easy
low total
so far. Michigan.
All these points. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Uh-huh.
This will be a little tougher. They'll be amped in Lincoln for this game with Michigan coming in. I worry about Harburg. I worry Harburg against this level of defense though. Has one of these games where he throws like 3 or 4 picks. And if he does that in this game, they're not covering. Simple as that. No, it's going to get away from Nebraska if he does not take care of the football. But he did last week. That's the one thing I liked about Harburg. He didn't force anything. Man, he's going to be that's going to be put to the test here. Let's put it that way against Michigan. All right, whether he can take care of the ball. All right, USC and Colorado. We've got USC 21.5-point road favorites, 73.5 the total. In this one, Dion, you know what? Go and watch Dion's postgame press conference. That's how you handle it after a loss like that. He was terrific in the postgame media, outstanding. He still was funny, and he didn't mince words. He said, "Look, we got our ass kicked. They outcoached us, outplayed us. They tried to get him to say something about Dan Lanning's pregame speech, saying they're just looking for clicks. We're looking for wins." That was a great pregame speech, I'll have to say.
Did you like it? Yeah. I mean, it was a little weird. I don't know the Hollywood, but we play on grass. It was just a little odd, though. But yeah, I guess
he's right to a certain degree because Dion's got a film crew running around, recording everything, practices, team meetings, all that.
He's Dion, man.
YouTube,
yeah, he's got to have a camera there at all times, probably. Shit.
He does have a little Hollywood movie type thing going with chronicling Colorado season. But he didn't mince words. He says, look, he's a great coach, Dan. He had his team well prepared. I like that he took the bullet, that finally things didn't go well for the first time this year. And Dion didn't hide. Dion didn't deflect any questions. He answered them all honestly and forthright and just, spoke honestly that, hey, we just got our butts kicked, outplayed all 3 phases, all that stuff. And I like that. I respect that. Out of Deion Sanders. And say what you will. I mean, people love him, people hate him. He's entertaining. I don't know how you can say he's not. He's a very entertaining, charismatic guy. He always has been. There's no question. And I just like the way he handled it in that press conference. And I like what he said, too. It's like, we can't have a pity party around here. Nobody's walking around with napkins and tissues, in the locker room. We got to get up and get back to work. Let's go, he said. So, wow. And get back to work they must, C-Mac, because they got USC and this juggernaut offense rolling into Boulder, Colorado on Saturday for another big noon game. Man, they love putting Colorado in these big noon time slots. This is the 3rd time they've been in this time slot with Gus and Joel Klatt on Fox this year. And here they are again for that early game. Was there vulnerability from USC last week? I mean, that looked to me like a little sleepwalk from USC against Arizona State. I mean, defensively, there's that USC defense. We thought they're starting to iron out some of these issues, and it came back again against Drew Pine, who was lighting them up at times. I mean, that's concerning, absolutely concerning to me in this game. Now, the over fell short because Colorado couldn't trade points with Oregon, and the offensive line was just completely destroyed and blown up by Oregon's defensive front. And Shedeur Sanders was on his butt, for most of that game, running for his life. Is USC going to be a team capable of giving that same kind of pressure with the pass rush that Oregon did? I'm not so sure. The jury's out to me still on USC's defense. They've got a championship caliber offense with Caleb Williams, with this group of receivers. The O-line's excellent. We know Caleb Williams is another Heisman candidate this year. Marshawn Lloyd is just an outstanding running back. Singer and Williams and Rice leading the receiving core. They're absolutely loaded. The offense is championship caliber. I'm still not sure about the defense, though. And it's going to be put to the testers. I think back home, after an embarrassing effort, Colorado's going to want to show something here in this game. This is the very first time I've been tempted to take Colorado, plus 22 against, because I just think USC and Oregon, there's a gap defensively. They're both electrifying offensively, both teams, but I think there's a gap defensively. Oregon just better defensively than USC, and I think we might see signs of that here. So I'm leaning Colorado. I'd like to bet over because I definitely think Colorado's offense is going to have more success at home against USC than last week at Oregon. And I definitely think USC can do whatever they want on offense against this Colorado defense. They should be able to move the football up and down against the Buffs. But, man, 73.5. 73.5. That is really, really high. It just might be a little too high for me to get there. What do you think here, C-Mac, USC, Colorado?
Yeah, that is high. One thing, though, the SC games, and it just got there, got over, 11 of 12. Their games still went over with Arizona State. SC is going to be able to do what they want offensively. You could maybe even look at their team total, which is going to be crazy high. Again, it seems like they get to 50 lately. Colorado just can't stop anyone. I mean, Oregon had 500 yards and shut it down, right after the first half after they were blown out. In Colorado, that line has got to keep him trying. He can't run for his life. And that was just awful. I know he can't get a ton. He needs a little bit of time to make some plays. I thought this would be, 3 touchdowns. It's over it a little bit. Now, SC, both teams will be up for Colorado. I think will play a little better now back at home. So maybe the points in where it just was a fade last week with Oregon, can they, score here on this SC defense? Because I know Caleb Williams will on this Colorado defense just can't do anything. So yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna wait on this one. If I even want to go Colorado's way, they're just so bad defensively, but can they score on SC will be the big question if they're in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's 2 weeks in a row the defense has been ripped. Colorado, even though they beat Colorado State, the Rams went up and down and had a good offensive game. And obviously Oregon did whatever they wanted all game long against Colorado until they finally showed some mercy in the fourth quarter and took their foot off the gas pedal, or else it would have probably been even worse. Keep in mind, though, there's a key injury at receiver. They're already down Travis Hunter, the dual wide receiver / cornerback. And now Xavier Weaver left that game due to injury for Colorado against Oregon, and he's questionable, abdomen injury, or not abdomen, undisclosed injury for him. So let's see if he's available. That would be maybe their top 2 receivers out if Xavier Weaver's unable to play against USC on Saturday. All right, next up, Oregon-Stanford. We stay in the Pac-12. Oregon, 27-point road favorite, 61 the total. I mean, to me, there's no reason to step in front of Oregon right now, other than maybe they have a letdown after a huge ballyhooed win against Colorado. And look, Stanford, tooth and nail, down to the wire against Arizona. What a bounce back after losing to Sacramento State, an FCS team. And there they were against Arizona and took the Wildcats right down to the wire before falling just short, 21-20 in that game. Look, a better game from the quarterbacks. Ashton Daniels, in particular, had a better game. They had some ability to run the ball. Defense actually played a lot better than I thought. They've really frustrated. I was shocked Jaden DeLora, in particular, had so many struggles against Stanford last week. But credit to the defense. However, the defense is going from that to Oregon. That's a huge step up in class here for Stanford's defense. To me, the only reason you would take Stanford, at least for me, is you're buying into the letdown spot after that game. And I can't do that. They've been too good. They've been unbelievable on both sides of the ball. Oregon this year, 4-0 straight up, 4-0 against the spread, smashing teams, Portland State, Hawaii, Colorado, Texas Tech, a very good road win there too, by 8. Yeah, I'm not really ready to step in front of Oregon here, even in a potential flat spot after the big win. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, it is a little bit. This is the one going on the road after the massive win where they could just be, it's like get in, get out for Oregon. So if you like Oregon, I just look to the team total. I know Stanford, I took Stanford with the points, and that's after they lost, this week. And the defense did play well against Delora. Man, and that game was close, just a 1-point win for Arizona. So Oregon does what they want, but they've had trouble in better Stanford teams in years past. But going there at Stanford have given them fits. But of course, Oregon looks well-oiled machine. But if I get over 4 touchdowns here, I'll look to Stanford at home.
Kind of the way I feel, too, about this next Pac-12 juggernaut, Washington. Here they are at Arizona. Washington, 18-point road favorites, 69.5 down to 17.5 and some. So there has been some money on Arizona. Well, there was some money on Cal last week as well against Washington. How did that go? Not very well.
Yeah, interception is what happened. That was awful.
I mean, if they get any sort of defense from this Washington team, I mean,
yeah,
they could win this conference. They could be in the playoff. I'm starting to buy in. That's a possibility for this Washington team. We are seeing some of the best. Now, again, it's early. They haven't faced all their tougher games. Washington, for the most part, are still on the horizon. But we are seeing some of the most pristine, perfect, just almost like a perfection at a quarterback right now from Michael Penix Jr. Man, this is just, he is putting zing, bing, bing. Every ball is perfect, accurate, on the money, in stride of the receiver. Whether it's a short pass, an intermediate pass, a deep ball, it's just right on target. I mean, the accuracy is incredible. And this guy couldn't throw a ball accurately half the time in Indiana. So that's an indictment on the Hoosiers and their coaching staff. And now he's working with DeBoer here in Washington. And man, he looks like, again, another quarterback that's probably right as of right now in the running for the Heisman. He's been absolutely amazing. Just the pinpoint accuracy of his throws, Michael Penix Jr., and working his way back from all the injuries he's had too. Just remarkable stuff. He's been throwing for at least 300 yards in every game, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in the first. Now, it's going to get tougher. I don't know if it's going to get tougher here, though, against Arizona. Now, we do know that Washington, as far as their schedule goes, they've got a bye week after this game, and then they play Oregon. But that's, again, in 2 weeks. They have a bye after this game. So keep that in mind. I'm not going against Washington anymore. I'm not. And Arizona's defense, it's better this year, but man, I don't know if they've faced anything like what they're going to see here from this Washington Huskies team. They played Stanford, UTEP, Mississippi State, and Northern Arizona. And the one team that could throw the football was Mississippi State, and they put up the most points of any team against Arizona so far this year. And when you look at the Arizona defense, 219.2 passing yards per game. They are a weaker defense, Arizona, against the pass compared to against the run. And that is not where you want to be weak against Michael Penix Jr. in Washington. So I ain't stepping in front of Washington. Just won't do it. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, Washington played great. Like I said, all those just jumped on them early. All those turnovers from Finley. You know what? It was junk, but they did give up a bunch of yards in the end, to Cal. I know they had the lead, but I worried down later on. I just don't think the Washington defense is for real. I need to go in there and win. That's just if you want to lay these points with them. One thing with Arizona, I've looked, their unders have come through a ton. If this is this like in the 70s, 71, so if it goes up, I'd maybe look to the under in this one. Washington maybe not going crazy like they did at home. This is a get in, get out type game, so I'm looking under.
And keep in mind, Arizona has covered 2 in a row against Washington in the last 2 meetings. Last year, they put up 526 total yards against Washington. It ended up 49-39 in favor of Washington. Flew over I could only look over 69.5. It is a high total, but I lean that way. 49-39 last year. And even 2 years ago in Arizona, it was 21-16. Another tight game. So Washington has had some battles here the last 2 years with Arizona. But, man, they look like a different level Washington team this year. That's what would concern me about taking Arizona again in another head-to-head meeting here against Washington. All right, next up, Illinois-Purdue, Big Ten matchup. Purdue, 1 point home favorites, 52.5 being the total in this game. I mean, pick your poison right now. I mean, Purdue that was very disappointing from them against Wisconsin on Friday night. It's just been the Syracuse game was disappointing. Losing to Fresno as favorites in their opener. Not good on defense. They are really not good on defense, Purdue. That's becoming more and more of an issue. You give up 38 to Wisconsin, 35 to Syracuse, 39 to Fresno. That's a problem. Look, I'll say this about Illinois. They've played a tough schedule. Toledo's a pretty good MAC team. Kansas is a good team. Penn State's really good. Florida Atlantic is, a decent team. I'm not laying points with Purdue. No way. This is an Illinois or pass spot for me here in this game. And I know for Illinois, they've been disappointed. They haven't covered a point spread yet, 0-4 against the number this year. But you're getting them in a situation here where they're facing a Purdue defense that hasn't been able to stop anybody. Altmaier, the quarterback for Illinois, has definitely been rough. He's definitely been struggling so far in the early part of this season. It's going to make me wonder, too, with Altmaier, even in the performances he's had so far. Do they give John Paddock a look, at some point? Because when you look at it, he did get some time against Penn State when Altmaier got pulled, and it was back to Altmaier last week. But, I think the clock's ticking on Altmaier. You're an Ole Miss transfer. You should be a little bit better than you've been, but we haven't seen it. Tough game, but I could only look at Illinois. I do think even though Illinois' defense has declined a little bit this year, certainly, I think if I trust who's going to get a stop for me, I'd probably lean a little more to Illinois right now than Purdue as far as that's concerned. Totals wise, I'm neutral on the total. I think it could go either way. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, what's happened to these defenses like in years past? And that's why this total's gone up. But usually think this would be in the 40s, and these defenses could play well. Purdue just keeps getting gashed. They thought they play a little bit better, at home, and that's why I can't back them in this game here at home. They just can't win at home. They can't cover at home, even as a small dog. That's why I wanted nothing to do with them last week when they were getting 6 against Wisconsin, who still owns their ass. We talked about just beat them up again, seems like every year. Illinois, their defense, it seems like, is a little bit better. I thought they looked better against Penn State. They just gave up, you mentioned the 4 interceptions earlier in the show. It's just a tough one here. I want nothing to do with it. Purdue can't win at home. I don't think I'm going to get involved at all. I'd maybe lean Illinois. And with the defense, until something changes, it probably could get over, but it's pretty high here.
Yeah, it's tough because these are two teams where I don't trust either defense, but at times I don't trust either offense, especially.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that's the tricky part with the total. All right, Alabama, Mississippi State down to the SEC. Alabama 14.5 point road favorites, 48. I'm going to be brief with my analysis. I don't think I'm betting this game. I'm still at fading Mississippi State or pass right now. I don't like the defense. The offense did play well against South Carolina. They got shut down completely, though, by LSU. I think they had 2 first downs at halftime in that LSU game. Or it was something really bad in the first. They could not move the ball against LSU. That's a concern here because I saw Alabama's defense get some swagger back in that win against Ole Miss. They struggled against Texas, but man, they got their swagger back on defense. They made Jackson Dart look pretty bad in the second half of that come from behind win against Ole Miss. Ole Miss did nothing on offense for most of that second half. And look, Jalen Milroe, he's going to make plays that frustrate you. He has the bad interception in the end zone there, but he's also very athletic, run the football. He's still a very erratic passer. But against this defense for Mississippi State, which has really looked bad, he might be able to thrive here. But I don't want to lay this many. I don't want to lay more than 2 touchdowns on the road with Alabama, but I know I don't want Mississippi State. So easy pass for me. What do you think, Seaman?
Yeah, I mean, if I were to here, I don't think I'm going to get involved. I'd lay it with Alabama. They're kind of like LSU, and they've owned Mississippi State, and that's with better teams, in years past.
Yeah.
And Rodgers did look better, but that LSU game, he started like, I don't know what it was, 1 of 12. He couldn't hit anybody. And you mentioned Alabama's defense looked better, at least last week, the last couple weeks. Just their offense, which should be able to, because Mississippi State just can't stop anything. Like they can't get any pressure on the quarterback, nothing at all. Alabama, 5-0 ATS their last 5 against Mississippi State. Obviously, a couple home, a couple road. They've just owned them. I'd lay it or nothing here. And
Yeah,
that's crazy. Usually you think as a dog, Mississippi State at home, catching this many. I can't do it. Not the way that defense is look.
Look at these last 5 meetings, by the way. And it doesn't matter, Tuscaloosa or Starkville. It hasn't mattered. Look at the scores. 24-0, Alabama. 38-7, Alabama. 41-0, Alabama. 49-9, Alabama. 30-6, Alabama. Maybe I should lay the points, man. And I'm normally a little fearful because I've seen Alabama, and I remember Milroe last year, Auburn, the Iron Bowl on the road, and they were a huge favorite in that game. They needed overtime to win the game. Maybe I've got that game in my mind. But yeah, that's some ugly recent series history for Mississippi State against Alabama. So yeah, if I were given a choice, I would take Alabama minus 14.5 before I take Mississippi State. I've been fading Mississippi State all season. I would not stop here. All right. Next up, we've got Iowa State and Oklahoma. Oklahoma 20-point home favorites, 48. I might lay it with Oklahoma here. I think Iowa State is awful. Absolutely terrible. And I know they won last week against Oklahoma State, but Oklahoma State's in bad shape right now, too. They just got beaten at home by South Alabama the week before that, blown out on their home field by South Alabama. So don't give Iowa State too much credit for that. And plus, Oklahoma State's offense has been in shambles. Mike Gundy's been going through 3 different quarterbacks because he doesn't trust any of them. And Iowa State still gave up 27 points, even though they won 34-27. They still gave up 27 points. And Oklahoma State had over 400 yards of offense in that game. Now, the Iowa State passing game shredded them. It was definitely the best game I've seen out of Rocco Becht, who had really been struggling. 348 through the air. But this is Oklahoma's defense on the road now. If you think you're doing that again, you're very mistaken. And look, Oklahoma just continues to take apart teams. 4-0 straight up, 4-0 against the spread. Arkansas State 73-zip. SMU is a pretty solid team, good team, 28-11. Tulsa 66-17. On the road at a capable Cincinnati team. They win and cover. They win by 14. This is Oklahoma or nothing. I am not going anywhere near Iowa State on the road in this matchup against this defense. What do you think here, Cole?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little different, but Oklahoma State's just been so bad. Because I look at this because more Oklahoma, unless they score a ton, I lean their way. It's just the under. Unless Beck all of a sudden, which haven't seen anything out of him, until they scored some points last week. And the Oklahoma defense has been good enough. I mean, they did go up the yards last week to Cincy, but they made big plays when they had to. So, yeah, I kind of lean under in this one. And Oklahoma wins again here. It's just, do you want to lay it?
Yeah. I don't know if I will, but I'm tempted. I'm definitely thinking about it, laying 20 here with Oklahoma. All right, Houston and Texas Tech. We stay in the Big 12. Of course, Houston now a member of the Big 12. Texas Tech, 9-point home favorites, 53.5 the total. Obviously, I was on Texas Tech last week. And look, they didn't start the game well with Tyler Shuck at quarterback. But then when he left that game with that broken fibula, and it looks like he's going to be out for a while now for Texas Tech. And he's out for the season. In fact, it was just confirmed. Yeah. Or at least out 6 to 8 weeks, it looks like, which is, you might as well pretty much say he's done for the season. Joey McGuire made that announcement, broken fibula, he'll have to undergo surgery. I did not like what I saw from Baron Morton at the quarterback spot coming into that game against West Virginia. I mean, look at this. I know they were behind. They had to throw the ball, but 13 for 37.
Yeah. Ouch.
35% completions. That is horrific quarterback play. This is another pass for me, but I'm not a fan of this Houston team. Now, they did just destroy Sam Houston State, but again, we talked about it earlier. They got no offense, but I don't know. Maybe Texas Tech's going to have no offense here because we didn't see much of it. So, begrudgingly, I probably have to lean to Houston here, even though I don't like that team. I don't like Dana Holgorsen. I think their defense is still susceptible against a good offense, but I don't know if Texas Tech's a good offense right now without Tyler Shuck. What do you think here, C-Mac, Houston, Texas Tech?
Yeah, I mean, Morton's got to be a little bit better than how horrible he was, right? You mentioned 13 or 37. They are back home. and I think they win the game actually, but I can't lay the points either. This is a pass. I can't take Houston as a dog. I just don't trust them. They beat Sam Houston. We went through that game earlier. I just don't want them here at all. I don't know what they bring from week to week, and this was just a pass for me as well.
Yeah, and before we give Houston credit for UTSA, that win early in the season, UTSA is way down. We're starting to see that right now. It's just they are not the same UTSA team right now. That was all turnovers for Frank Harris in that game. So, as I said, I am not sold on Houston on the road here at Texas Tech, but man, the stomach laying 9.5 with a team that couldn't move the football. Once Tyler Shuck went down to injury last week against West Virginia, I'm not rushing to lay this many with Tech either. All right, Georgia and Auburn, renewal of a great SEC rivalry here. Georgia, 14.5-point road favorites, 47 being the total in this one. Money's coming in on Auburn. Man, this is tough because Georgia, to me, has not played 4 great quarters of football in a lot of their games this year. They've played okay at times, but they have not shown that Georgia dominance really that we're accustomed to. And even the game against UAB last week, UAB has looked pretty bad at times, especially that Louisiana game where the Cajuns went up and down the field against UAB. And there's Georgia giving up 21 points. They didn't cover. They won 49-21. And the South Carolina game was another game where they failed to cover a big number as favorites, 24-14. They struggled a little bit on offense in that game. They are not crushing teams. So I get why people like Auburn, but I don't know if I trust Auburn's offense enough against what's still the strength of Georgia's team, and that's the defense. Because this Auburn offense last week really had a tough time against Texas A&M. I mean, it's a work in progress for you. And keep in mind the California game, which is the only other decent team they've played, they should have lost that game, and they only scored 14 points. This Auburn offense isn't working right now. And that's concerning even against Georgia, even though Georgia's had some inconsistency in their performance the last 2 weeks. So it's another really tough game. You look at series history with Georgia and Auburn. It's been all Georgia the last 3 years, 27-6, 34-10, 42-10. I mean, Auburn's not even been competitive with Georgia the last few years. They're betting Auburn because this is an anti-Georgia opinion that the betting markets have, that Georgia's not been dominant enough to be laying more than 2 touchdowns on the road. I just don't know if Auburn's the team that can take advantage of these perceived struggles, if you will, for Georgia. I don't know if they can because this offense has not looked very good. And that A&M game especially, not good on offense at all. And you got to be able to score something if you're going to keep within 2 touchdowns of Georgia. And keep in mind, Georgia's still pretty good on defense, even though their offense, Carson Beck, is still growing and developing. What do you think here, C-Mac?
That's the issue here. Auburn, can they score anything? Peyton Thorne, awful. They yanked him. The other guy's not great either. Ashford came in for a bit. It was just
there's a reason they brought in Peyton Thorne. Robbie Ashford's not a starting quarterback yet, and maybe he never will be. That's why they went out and got Thorne in the portal from Michigan State.
When I was worried Thorne would have a game, like he's looked pretty good in these cupcake wins. Like he just couldn't get anything against an A&M defense that we saw Miami scoring them. I thought Auburn could get a touchdown or 2 and this game would be close. I thought it would be a little bit lower scoring. Hey, we'll get to A&M later. Max Johnson came in and just started winging it around all of a sudden. And they won that game easily. And the only touchdown for Auburn was a defensive touchdown. They tried to move the ball after that, didn't get anything. So I just don't know. Unless they here at home can get some points, I don't know if I can look at them. This is one that I got to maybe sit with all week because Georgia just hasn't been dominant. I don't know. Maybe they haven't need to be. They got to get going. I know they have the athletes and they still have the defense, I believe. So, yeah, I'm off for now.
And Georgia has dominated Auburn. And the one thing, too, this is a CBS game, Saturday afternoon, that prime time slot in the afternoon. And I know Kirby Smart is a great motivator. We've seen some great speeches on, they've captured some great pregame speeches from Kirby to his team, including the championship game last year against TCU. He ain't going to be happy with the way they played in their last SEC game against South Carolina. He's probably going to say something. That's not up to the Georgia standard that we struggled so much in that game. Let's show what we're truly made of. I could see him lighten his team up to get them ready for this game. And if they're playing at a higher level, Auburn's not going to keep up.
I look at Auburn's team total under, of course, the under in this game. And you already hit on it earlier, but Georgia just owns them. 6-0 ATS, the last 6 against Auburn.
Yeah, we'll see if that continues. All right, Michigan State, Iowa. As we go to the Big Ten, Iowa 11.5-point home favorites, 36.5 the total. This is scary because I've been so anti-Michigan State here the last couple of weeks. There's no question. Since the Mel Tucker shit went down, I should have faded them against Washington. I didn't. I did take Maryland as a road favorite against Michigan State last week, and I did cash. I should probably keep fading Michigan State, but I'm actually thinking of going the other way and taking Michigan State here. And I can't lay 11.5 with Iowa. That much I know with this offense. That's just not going to happen. Sorry. That's an impossibility that yours truly is going to be laying 11.5 with this pop gun Iowa offense. It's just no way. I'm very disappointed in what I'm seeing. They're not running the football like they have in the past. The O-line's been overwhelmed. Cade McNamara has not been the answer. He's struggled too. It's like everyone that goes to play quarterback at Iowa, and it's the same old, offense that just doesn't do anything. And we're seeing it again. 9 for 19, 103 yards passing, 2 interceptions for Mac. And that was against Western Michigan, actually, that stat line. 5 for 14, 35% against Penn State.
They had 76 total. Yeah. They couldn't run it. That's a real problem because, he can't throw it. He only had 40 yards passing.
42 passing yards in that game. Now, Michigan State, I will say Michigan State hasn't thrown in the white, waved the white flag. They haven't thrown in the towel. And even the Maryland game was a bad performance, but they didn't give up. They battled back a little bit in the second. That might be just enough to say, you know what, I got to grab the points here with Michigan State. As long as I don't see that they're not rolling over. It's been a trying season for them. I get it. Noah Kim's a work in progress at quarterback, but I just don't have confidence in Iowa's offense to be able to win any sort of game by margin right now against anybody. So I'm not rushing to bet Michigan State, but I'm definitely leaning to the Spartans here. I cannot and will not endorse Iowa as any sort of double-digit favorite with that offense right now. And Brian Ferentz, the clock is ticking, man. You got to average 25 points per game to save your job. Good luck with that. You're behind pace right now as far as that's concerned, especially coming off that debacle against Penn State. What do you think, Conor?
Yeah. Well, they better score some points here against Michigan State. It's just, he's just going to bury himself even more. And I think they can, but I think it's just over 10 points. I don't know, because I think Iowa wins here, and that was just so hard to watch them a little bit in that game against Penn State. It was horrible, because even in the past, their defense would have kept them in the game, and they'd at least be able to run the ball. When that's not happening, they're gone because they can't throw it. So it's just I don't know what happens here. Michigan State's just been a disaster. Now they hit the road. Kim's had too many mistakes. I just don't want much in this game. Maybe look at it later in the week, but right now, pass it.
Yeah, it's not easy to stomach a Michigan State bet right now either. I will say that. This is a team that's not been good here in the wake of the terrible Mel Tucker nonsense. But still, I can't lay it doubles with Iowa, and I certainly won't be doing that. All right, next up here, we've got LSU and Ole Miss. SEC action. LSU 2.5-point road favorites. Total in this one 63.5. I like the over here. LSU doesn't have a great defense, and we're seeing that more and more and more. Florida State just picked them apart in that season opener. And even last week against Arkansas, could not get a stop to put that game away. They needed their offense to keep scoring, and Jaden Daniels to keep piling on the points in order to finally put away Arkansas in that game. So it's not been good from LSU defensively. 45 allowed to Florida State. The Mississippi State game, I take that with a grain of salt. Arkansas, when they played a pretty good offense, they have not gotten stops on defense, but their offense is very good with Jaden Daniels. We know that. Dual threat quarterback for the Tigers, played well against Arkansas. They've got Logan Diggs leading the backfield, Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, Mason Taylor, good receiving core for LSU. That defense is just not good. Ole Miss coming off the Alabama loss. It's pretty much typical par for the course. Lane Train getting derailed by Alabama every year. He just can't seem to beat that team, no matter how good his team is and how many questions Alabama has. Still can't get the job done against Nick Saban. But now back at home, I expect them to have a better performance here with LSU coming to town. I definitely lean Ole Miss, at less than a field goal as home favorites in this game, but I like the total even more. I'm playing this one up and over 63.5. We should see points. I think Dart and the Ole Miss offense can have success moving the ball. Quinshad Judkins should be able to have success running the football against this LSU team. I mean, you look at the LSU defensive numbers here this year. They're giving up 132 rushing yards per game, and they're giving up 228 passing yards per game. Definitely having their issues on that side of the football, so against the better offenses. So over the total for me, I like even more than a side. What do you think here, C-Man?
Yeah, it's been money, and it was easy to over, and Arkansas on the points, like the easiest non-sweat of the week there. I think there's more of it. LSU is kind of, owned Ole Miss in the past. Go back to the over, though. 8 straight for LSU, 7 of 8 in the SEC, and their last 6 meetings, 5 of 6 have gone over, especially if it's still 63 like this right here. Take the over. It'll get there. If it starts going way out, up even more to 67 or something like that, 66, I'd look out. But I think we see points in this game back and forth. Maybe LSU could pull it out. I'm just going to stay off the side. I agree with you. I think there's fireworks in this one.
Yeah, definitely we are in agreement. We should see a pretty good amount of offense here on both sides of the equation here with the Rebels and the Tigers in this matchup. All right, Missouri and Vanderbilt. Another SEC matchup here. We've got Missouri 13.5, 14-point road favorites, 56 being the total in this game. There's everybody now has gotten to the point where I think everybody's just about given up on Vanderbilt. I mean, I definitely thought Clark Lee had the program progressing, slowly getting better and better and better. And I think a lot of people expected, improvements this year from Vanderbilt, and we're really not seeing it. I mean, the 2 victories that Vanderbilt were a narrow win against Hawaii, 35-28 at home, 17-point favorites. They never sniffed a point spread cover. They don't cover against Alabama A&M, 47-13. So they beat Hawaii and Alabama A&M at home for their 2 victories. Then they get destroyed by Wake on the road. UNLV goes up and down the field against Vandy's defense and beats them 40-37. And then last week can't stop Kentucky, and they lose 45-28. So, and they haven't covered a number this year. Vanderbilt this deep into the season, and here they are 0-5 against the spread so far this season. They failed to cover a number. So it's tough to stomach taking Vanderbilt right now, especially in that defense, really, really struggling. That being said, last 2 years they have covered against Missouri, 9-point 9-point loss 2 years ago and a 3-point loss last year, a game that went right down to the wire. And I don't know if I trust Missouri laying almost 14 on the road. This is a team that almost lost at home to Middle Tennessee. I know they had the great win against Kansas State. Make no mistake about it. They played well. They got the win and cover against Memphis, but I don't think much of Memphis. I think that's a declining program. And there's Missouri, just 34-27, just barely squeaking out a point spread cover in that game. So it's a tough side for me. I'd probably just look at the over here, like with most Vanderbilt games. They're going to give up points. They'll score because I still think A.J. Swan and the offense can do some damage. Missouri will probably do what they want. And the one thing I'll say about Missouri and Brady Cook, he's getting his shit together after a rough start. He didn't play well against Middle Tennessee. It was a bit of a wake-up call. And since then, they've scored 30 and 34 points against Kansas State and Memphis. He's been a lot better throwing the football for Missouri the last couple weeks. Cody Schrader's been good running the ball for the Tigers as well. And again, better numbers from Brady Cook the last 2 games. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's really played good. This is the Brady Cook they wanted coming into the season. And the last 2 games, he's played a lot better for Missouri. So I would look over more than a side in this game. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, I agree. One thing, Vandy has been good against the number with the over. Get there. The defense just has been good. One thing Brady Cook, though, he just has been able to put these together in weeks and weeks, like 5-6 weeks. And it just seems he has a couple good ones and he has horrible one. Now, he should be able to pick apart this Vandy defense. I think they go in there in this road game, though, Missouri. I think Vandy can hang around. I know Swan, it's tough. He could have some bad turnovers that kill it, but I think this is too many points in this one. Missouri probably goes in there and wins, and we get plenty of points, but I'm interested in the home dog a little bit, who has no cover obviously, like you mentioned, so far this year.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And by the way, something to keep in mind too about Swan, he played the majority of that game against Kentucky, but did suffer an elbow injury later in the game. The game was already pretty much out of reach, but and Ken Seals had to finish that game. And so there is some question marks about Swan's availability here for this game against Missouri. So it could be Ken. And Ken Seals has started a bunch of games for Vanderbilt. He's been here now a couple of years.
Forever.
Yeah, he's gotten into 14 games for Vanderbilt in his career. 21 touchdowns. He's actually got a good touchdown interception ratio, 21 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, but he doesn't have a great completion rate, sub 60% completion rate the last 2 seasons for Vanderbilt. So, but he is mobile, can run a little bit, Ken Seals. So I think the difference is negligible personally, Swan to Seals for Vanderbilt. Their bigger issue is defense. They haven't been able to stop a nosebleed so far this year. All right, we got 4 games left, Texas A&M and Arkansas. Next up here, SEC action. This is a neutral site game, by the way, at Jerry's World, Jerry's Jones Palace, AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. Texas A&M 6.5-point road favorites, 55 the total. He always has this game in his place when A&M plays Arkansas every single year. More of the same here in this one. It's Arkansas. I'll give them credit. Battling back against LSU the way they did. Can they bring it again here against Texas A&M? A&M obviously gets the win against Auburn, 27-10. They played really well the 2 games after the loss, I should say, against Miami. But keep in mind, of course, with A&M, Connor Wegman, the injury status, we know against Auburn. That's what was impressive too about that game. Losing Connor Wegman to injury, Max Johnson had to come over. Of course, Max Johnson was with LSU for a couple of years, and he's been the backup here at A&M the last couple of years. Actually didn't play that bad coming into the game when Wegman had that leg injury. I feel bad for Wegman because Wegman, to me, was showing signs of being one of A&M's better quarterbacks they've had in the last few years, and very unfortunate to see him go down with that leg injury. So Max Johnson might be the starter here. Currently, Wegman is listed as doubtful for this game on Saturday against Arkansas. Lower leg injury. Jimbo Fisher said day-to-day they haven't ruled it out yet, but he is battling this this sprain. So a questionable best-case scenario right now for this game against Arkansas. But Johnson can come in there and play. And I do think A&M's a better defense than Arkansas. Arkansas still can give up points. They gave up points to BYU. They gave up points to LSU. I'd still lean it toward A&M to win this game. I'd feel better about it with Wegman. I probably won't bet it without Wegman. With Wegman, though, if he does come back, I might consider laying, 6.5, 7 here with A&M. I do think they're better this year than Arkansas, especially defensively. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, they are. Max Johnson's come in and do the job. Now he's got a full, now he's going to be starting in the full game. But yeah, 7-11 just came in. It's a big plays where they didn't have it in the first half and 2 touchdowns. And how much is it last week? Auburn's offense is really Texas A&M defense that good? I do think they're a little better than Arkansas. And yeah, from the years past, the defense is just let go in this one. That's why I thought last week this game's going over, though. So it was like they still have KJ Jefferson. I still think they can move the football and score points. So they're going to need that in this one. So if it's over a touchdown, I might look Arkansas's way. And I like to see, can Max Johnson keep this up as he did so well, against Auburn in the second half. But I'll look at Arkansas, and there should be points here early too. Might get over.
55.5, and the total hasn't budged, which doesn't surprise me considering we still don't know the status for Wegman on Saturday, and probably the total will be influenced one way or another based on whether he plays in this game. All right, Kansas and Texas. A nice Big 12 matchup here. Texas, 17-point home favorites, 61.5 the total. Is Kansas ready to go on the road and give what's looking more and more and more like a really, really good championship-capable Texas team a battle in this game? Can Kansas go on the road and give them any kind of battle? We think Kansas is good, but man, this is a big step up for this Jayhawks team, even though I like Lance Leipold quite a bit as a coach and what he's done. It's still a defense when you look at the results. They give up 23 to Illinois, 24 to Nevada, 27 to BYU, and this is by far an even better offense here with Quinn Ewers at the controls here for Texas. So I do worry about the Kansas defense a little bit. Texas has scored 37, 34, 31, 38, in their 4 games. I certainly lean over in this game. Can Kansas do enough offensively to keep them in this game? Because I like their quarterback. I like the skill position talent. I like their play calling. They've run some really good offense, Kansas. Jalen Daniels, quarterback, Devin Neal, the running back, Lawrence Arnold leading the receiving core. I think their play calling is really good. They've got some playmakers. They've been able to score points, Kansas, in every game this year, but they've also not seen a defense anywhere close to Texas level. And they're going to see that here on the road on Saturday. Let's see how they handle this. And last year, they could not handle it. Remember, there was those 2 years when Kansas was still not that good, and they would give Texas problems, 24-17, 50 to 48. They had the big upset against Texas 2 years ago. Yeah, Lance Leipold's first year on the job. They had covered 5 straight against Texas, but last year it was a different story. Texas 9-point favorites at Kansas, or 9-point road favorites at Kansas, 55 to 14. Destroyed Kansas. Kansas couldn't match up in the trenches with Texas. And now Texas is even better, I think, this year than they were last year. So I'm torn. I'm really, really torn on this game. I could see Kansas staying inside the number. My first thought was Kansas plus 17. But with the way that Texas is playing right now, on both sides of the ball, complete complementary football, I could also see this getting away from them on the road in Austin, like it did last year, which was in Kansas, by the way, that game last year, that 55-14 beatdown over Texas, or over Kansas for Texas, 55 to 14. The game did go over 69 points, and we have seen 3 straight head-to-head meetings go over the total with these two teams, 98 points, 113, and of course 69 last year, 55 of those 69 points scored by Texas. So that's why I think the over is the better look in this game. What do you think here, Connor? Very intriguing game here. Kansas, are they ready for prime time? Well, even though it's, I believe, an afternoon game, it is. Are they ready to go to Texas and give the Longhorns a game?
Yeah. This seems like where Texas in the years past, like, are they a different team? Like where they would lose or this could be a close game. And I think Kansas can move the ball a little bit on them. It's just their defense, like you mentioned. It just seems like there's going to be points, and this game probably gets over and even in the years past, Kansas would have to, 2 years ago, they got to move the ball, and score, because I just think Texas will get what they want here at home. So I'm intrigued a little bit. Texas has been able to run the ball well. Can Kansas run it on this Texas defense? That'll be interesting. And, they do have Jalen Daniels, so I think could keep him around in this game.
Good offense, too. And the defense has been lights out. Well, Alabama, they gave up some points, but you're going to give up some points against Alabama when you're playing them on the road. But other than that, Texas defense has been very, very strong this year. I do think Kansas can do some things, though, against them offensively. And then on offense, Connor, Quinn Ewers, and not only Quinn Ewers, but what he's got to work with. Jonathan Brooks. They haven't missed Bijan Robinson at all. Well, he's a great player, Bijan Robinson, but Jonathan Brooks has been terrific.
Yeah.
They're fine at running back now with Jonathan Brooks. And then the receivers, Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell. These are 2 terrific, terrific receivers and targets for Ewers. So a lot of weapons here for Texas. A lot that Kansas is going to have to deal with here in this game with their defense. All right, West Virginia and TCU. TCU 10.5, 11-point home favorites, 51 being the total in this game. Look, I'm a little reluctant. Once bitten, twice shy theory. I faded TCU as home favorites last week against SMU, and SMU couldn't hang with them at all. Beaten up, couldn't move the football. TCU offense got going and couldn't be stopped in the second half. It was a bad performance by the SMU defense, but you got to credit TCU's offense. And look, he's an experienced quarterback, Chandler Morris. He's been around a long time. And maybe TCU's not going to fall off like people thought. It was a pretty good win for them last week. And do I trust West Virginia on the road? I'm not so sure about that. They were good last week. Nice win against Texas Tech, but they benefited from the shock injury. Baron Morton was terrible. We already talked about it. let's see what this defense does against what still looks like a pretty good TCU offense. 42 against Colorado, 41 against Nicholls State, 36 against Houston, 34 in the win against SMU. I'm not so sure West Virginia. West Virginia, who have they played on offense so far? Penn State is the only good team they've played on offense, really. 38 points they gave up in that game against Penn State. Maybe a TCU team total over. Maybe I get interested in that in this game. Then I don't have to worry about the other side of it. I still have some questions about the TCU defense, but I don't know if it's going to show up here. West Virginia's offense has been certainly a work in progress. Garrett Green's been banged up, the quarterback, foot injury. We'll see if he plays here in this game. He did not play against Texas Tech. It was Nico Marchiol taken over at quarterback for West Virginia in that game. He didn't play that bad, but he didn't have to do much because Texas Tech couldn't do anything on offense. He's going to have to move the ball here against TCU. I'm not sure he will. So TCU team total over maybe for me. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, can West Virginia do enough? Because their defense, they're going to have to try to slow down TCU, and I think they can a little bit. But I think TCU just wins this game. It's just spread, out here now at 11.5. Maybe look to them early first half because I just don't know. On the road, at least, we want West Virginia. I'd look to them more at home with that defense. So it's just a little too far. But I look at TCU here. I think it's the win.
And by the way, this is a really this is a good number. This point spread's in a really good spot, in my opinion, 11.5. Last year, TCU won by 10. The year before, TCU won, or actually it was West Virginia, I should say, that won 29-17 against TCU. But last year it was a 10-point win for TCU. I could see, it being in that 10 to 14 range potentially for TCU. So right around.
I won't want to lay it.
Yeah,
that's for sure. Shout out to Devin.
Yes.
Got a new member. Appreciate it, my man.
We appreciate it. Thanks for joining us here on Hitting the Books. We're on every Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific with this show during the college football season. And we have reached our final game here on the show this week, San Diego State and Air Force. Air Force 11-point home favorites, 42.5 being the total in this game. San Diego State now at a very disappointing 2-3. I've talked many weeks on this show about how this program is just declining with Brady Hoke. At some point, you got to pull the plug and make a change. It can't continue. This used to be one of the dominant programs in the Mountain West, and it's fallen on hard times. Defense is just ridiculously bad. This used to be this San Diego State team for years. Run the football, play great defense. And they're not running the football anywhere close to as good, and they've forgotten how to play defense. I mean, Boise went up and down the field against them. 34-31 loss last Friday night at home against Boise. Now you got to go on the road and face this Air Force triple option. That being said, I'll say this. San Diego State's actually matched up well with Air Force. San Diego State had beaten them 9 straight times until last year when Air Force finally got the better of San Diego State, winning 13-3, but it was a struggle. San Diego State's run defense kept that triple option. Well, it was definitely a full triple option last year for Air Force. Now it's a hybrid triple option because cut blocking's been outlawed, but still a run-heavy offense. And when you look at the San Diego State run defense this year, that's what's been disheartening. They have been built on stopping the run, the strength of the team, and this year they're giving up 164.4 rushing yards per game, 5.2 rushing yards per play on against the run. That's not good. They have been just dreadful against the run. Nowhere near what we've seen from San Diego State teams in years past. I would only lay the points personally. Air Force at home. We know that's a strong home field there. Colorado Springs. We know what they did the last home game that they played there. They destroyed Utah State. It wasn't even a game. It was over at halftime. I don't trust San Diego State. I haven't had a San Diego State ticket in my pocket. Actually, last week I did have a small bit of.
They backdoored. Yeah, I mean, late. They got that late touchdown. Yeah.
7-point home dogs, and I didn't trust Boise State as a touchdown road favorite. It was every bit, I don't trust Boise as a road favorite as I want to endorse San Diego State. This week, I do not want to endorse San Diego State, not in this matchup, not on the road against a run defense that has fallen apart, with a run defense, I should say, that has fallen apart, San Diego State. And that's not what you want when you're playing Air Force. What do you think here, Seaman?
Yeah, I think, just over 10, but you kind of look at Air Force's team total and just go that way. San Diego State does that, this is going over as well. If San Diego State can score a couple touchdowns, this is going over this number. I thought it was just too light here at around 42 and that, depending where you look, 43. Their games have just gone over. Either their offenses, last week, San Jose, it was, I think, a similar in the mid 40s, right? And that went way over, had a big second half warm out. So I think this can get over. The total's just a little light. And I'd look at Air Force team total here.
You know what's funny is San Diego State went from running the ball and stopping the run, and now they can't run the football, and now they can't stop the run. They can't
stop the run, and they're trying to throw it, and it's okay. But then he throws interceptions. To
Jalen Maiden.
So it's Maiden, yeah.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Not good recipe.
That guy, you look at, holy fuck, he's a big guy for a quarterback, Jalen Maiden. He looks like he's got that linebacker, build to him, yet he's playing quarterback. But he's still a work in progress throwing the ball. But they are trying to throw the ball. Go back to what Ryan Lindley, the new offensive coordinator and former San Diego State quarterback, said before the season. We want to throw the ball more. And the one thing about Air Force, and I've said this for years, if you're going to try to score against Air Force, it's going to be in the passing game. And that's what Chevin Cordero did. Any point San Jose State got against Air Force last week was through the air with Cordero. If you're going to score against Air Force, it'll be the passing game. So I think you're right. I think this total could just creep over. I mean, it's 42, and they are throwing the ball more, San Diego State. They're not that dead nuts under team, San Diego State, like they used to be. And look at last week's game, 65 points between them and Boise State. So, yeah, I'm kind of with you, C-Mac, and seeing that this total, 42, might be just a little low here.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, Maiden was good last week with that backdoor cover. Like, he didn't have a pick when in those first few games. That's where, like, UCLA, he had multiple interceptions. I mean, what did he go? I think he had 241 here. 241's a TD, and he ran for 85. So I think they could get a little as well. Get over.
All right, there it is. That's the college football slate for this upcoming week here on Hitting the Books. We thank everybody for joining us. Hit the like button on the way out if you haven't done it. I'm going to end up talking a little bit. Usually we say final words and then we wrap it up. But my final words are going to be this Josh McDaniels debacle last night. I can't believe what went. I can't believe I saw an NFL head coach say this and do this. First of all, to kick a field goal, barely over 2 minutes left in the game, down by 8 points when you're that close, to scoring in the red zone. And then you actually take the field goal and kick the field goal, and then you get a break. Pittsburgh takes a penalty, automatic first down. And then you move it to 4th and 4 at 10-yard line or close to that. And you decide still, with even more time now off the clock since the first field goal attempt, that you're still going to kick the field goal. Again, down by 8. And thinking that he's going to get you must think, you don't have the 85 Bears on defense, Josh McDaniels. What did you think? You're going to get the ball back? You needed one stop to get it, or else you knew it was game over. They'd be able to run out the clock. And sure enough, you couldn't get that stop. It was a horrible decision. Any analytics known to man would tell you that the percentages say you're that close. You're 4th and 4 at the 10. Go for the first down. Keep the drive alive. Go for the touchdown. Get the 2 points. It's a better chance of you hitting on that than field goal to just go down by 5 and then trying to get the ball back with a defense that hasn't been any good when's the last time the Raiders had a good defense, man? I mean, my gosh. And you made that decision. It was a horrible decision.
1983.
X, formerly Twitter, knew it was a bad decision, but Josh McDaniels couldn't figure it the fuck out. And then I got to listen to him in the press conference say, and they asked him right away, good by the media to do that. That was the first question you should ask. Why the fuck did you kick a field goal down by 8 points with over 2 minutes left? He said, we needed multiple possessions. He didn't even have a clue that one possession game is 8-point deficit, moron. A touchdown and a 2-point conversion ties the game. So not only did he make a bad decision, he compounded the decision with an inane statement in his press conference saying we needed multiple possessions. No, you didn't. No, you didn't, fool. You're down by 8 points. Do the math, which apparently you can't do, or nobody on your coaching staff can do. 8 points is a 1-possession game in football. A touchdown and a 2-point conversion ties the game. I can't believe the idiocy. And I can't believe that I am stuck watching coaches like that for 3 hours, coaching this sport, coaching an NFL team at the highest level with that kind of capacity in the brain regarding clock management, game management situations. complete and utter disgrace, Connor. Terrible. I feel bad for you and the locals there in Las Vegas. You have to put up with this shit.
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, you kick the field goal, you still have to score the touchdown. You're not going to get the ball back. I mean, like you saw, they got it back with 12 seconds or whatever it was. It's like, and when I said you kick the field goal, you're just kicking him the ball back. Like you go for it, and then you try to play defense, and maybe you get the ball back. You still need that touchdown. You still need the touchdown and the 2. It just didn't make any sense. It's just like, it's just go for it, dipshit. Like, why are you kicking a field goal? I don't know. It was rough to watch. And then you said the comments was even worse.
And everybody knows it's a horrible decision. Like when you're that close, you got to assume that you can't assume you're getting the football back, and you can't assume you're getting the football back with any sort of reasonable amount of time on the clock to do something about it. And you're still a touchdown behind. It's not like kicking the field goal brings you within 3 points. You were still down 5 points. You would have still needed a touchdown. And go the line.
Yeah. That's all I mean by it. And it doesn't really, the exact time, I forget, but
yeah. I mean, absolutely brutal. And I said it on
just didn't make sense
there. You know, Josh McDaniels better pray his team gets the football back again in deciding to kick the field goal, because that might be the mother of all moron decisions to kick a field goal there otherwise. And then great call, coach. You did get the football back with a whopping 12 seconds left while still needing a touchdown. You nailed that one. Not to mention 12 seconds left, needing to go 88 yards to score a touchdown with no timeouts left. Yeah.
Saying you got to get a touchdown.
Yeah.
So it's just like you're not going.
Team management. Yeah.
Brutal.
Hey.
Brutal.
And I'm going to cite that example to say, how dare you, Ian? You're talking like you could do this job, and these qualified, well-paid coaches can't do the job, but you can. I stand by it. I can do a better job managing a fucking end of the game situation than Josh McDaniels could last night. Seriously. I'm not trying to say,
and like he gets paid a lot of money.
Coach, but yeah,
a ton of money, and there's a ton of guys, coaches in your ear, and yeah. Hey, classic Raider move too. I mean, shit organization.
And people want to rip Jimmy Garoppolo. He didn't play well. He kind of sucked last night. Let's be real. But you go from Kyle Shanahan to this dope as an offensive mind and as a head coach, it's going to be rough. Yeah, 100%. Great stuff, Connor Mack. Final thoughts, and then we'll wrap it up.
Nothing. I like the rant there at the end with McDaniels, as always. Let's have a good week. College football was all right last week. Let's have a good week. I'll see you next Monday, my man. Appreciate it. Shout out to everyone. Hit the like button on the way out. That's all we ask for. Thank you.
Now, I did not see it because I was at a football viewing type of party last night and throughout the day. So I didn't see Jimmy's stream, the Sunday night crew here. I'm going to go back and look just to hear how they documented that end of the game during the live stream last night with the Raiders and the Steelers. I'm sure they were all over it, just how ridiculous that was what Josh McDaniels did at the end of that game. But nevertheless, that's why the Raiders are the Raiders right now. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. A great show. We appreciate it. Hit the like button on the way out. We're going to have the individual game clips posted on the Pub Sports Radio YouTube channel later in the day. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Hit the like button. Everyone, we rhymed off all the names, everyone in the chat earlier. We appreciate you joining us. I will be back tonight on the Monday Night Football live stream. I'll be on for the first half of both of those games with Jimmy the Bag and crew, Eagles, Bucks, and then Rams and Bengals. And it's looking like Joe Burrow might play for Cincinnati tonight. So I'll be on for the first half of both of those games. C-Mac, are you on that tonight?
Yeah, I'll be on sometime.
There you go.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Monday night live stream. Make sure you tune in. I'll be on with Jose for Say Hey Plays tomorrow. Betting with the Bag with Jimmy on Friday. And, of course, Thursday night I'll lead off with Mike M., the Thursday night show as well, as we get ready for the Thursday night NFL game, which this week happens to be the game between the Lions and the Packers. Very interesting Thursday night game this week. Good stuff. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. For Connor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great week. Enjoy the college football action this week, and we will be back again next Monday, same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, for another edition of Hitting the Books right here on Pub Sports Radio. Class dismissed.